Thank you all for coming. We will now call tonight's meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Klovstad? Here. Vice Mayor Pallavi?
Here.
Mayor Romack?
Here.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
Here.
And I will note Councilmember Henderson is absent. Thank you.
And I will note she is on her way, coming back and took a flight and landed in Reno very recently, so she'll be here soon. With that, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all. It's now public comment. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to make any comments on items not on tonight's agenda. If there's any member of the public who would like to make a comment, we'd invite you to come on up to the podium. You have 3 minutes to make your comment. There's a timer to my left, your right, and please state your name. Would anyone like to make a public comment this evening? Seeing none, we will close public comment. With that, we will move on to our presentations. And up first, we have the B-Cycle presentation from Alfred Knotts.
Good evening, Your Honor. Alfred Knotts, members of Town Council. We're here to give a presentation, or I'll preface that B-Cycle will be here to give a presentation on the overall program from this summer. I believe Mr. Brian Conger is on our remote and virtual. And our program did, I'll just give a little facts here or some information. So the program did launch on June 27th, and then we closed shop up around October 31st. We had approximately 20,000 rides during that time, or 20,000 miles ridden during that time. And the overall system had about 50 bikes out in the system and 100 docking stations. So that was kind of our inaugural season. We did plan to launch the year before. There were some logistical issues with some supply chain issues and everything. So we launched this last year and do feel that it was very well received. But I will let B-Cycle and Brian Conger speak for the rest of the program.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today. Just bear with me while I get my screen shared. All right, can people see that all right?
Yes.
All right, appreciate that introduction, Alfred. I guess first and foremost, I want to just thank you everybody for the opportunity to be here tonight, but more specifically, thank you for the opportunity to serve the town of Truckee with Bike Share. My name is Brian Conger. I'm the executive director of B-Cycle. I'm talking to you virtually. I'm based out in Wisconsin, where we are headquartered as a company owned by Trek Bicycle based in Waterloo, Wisconsin. It's been a great initial season for us. We are really excited to be serving the town of Truckee, its residents and visitors, and really excited to be able to bring Bike Share to your community and the future that we have ahead of us as we expand this program and service. So as Alfred alluded, I'll go over some program stats, at least for our initial partial season, but a little bit about B-Cycle. So we are a bike share equipment and service provider based in Waterloo, Wisconsin. As I mentioned, owned by Trek Bicycle, which is a privately held company established in 1976. And Trek, as an overall organization, its mission is to change the world by getting more people on bikes. And B-Cycle, as a bike share equipment and service operator, really embody that mission by making it easy, convenient, and accessible for people to go buy e-bike by accessing any one of our stations with a mobile app and getting from where they are to where they want to be conveniently and in a fun manner. As Alfred alluded, I apologize, there might be some background noise. I'm near a train line and the train comes by right around this time of night, so I apologize if that is distracting at all. This is a photo of our launch event credit of Keep Truckee Green. We launched June 30th with a ribbon cutting. As you can tell, beautiful, fantastic day, and it was a great way to get our program on the ground right before the 4th of July holiday. So it was a fantastic way just to kick off. Right after we launched the program, we rolled right over to Truckee Thursdays and got to have a great time just talking to different people, engaging with them about what bike share is and how they could try it. And really it was a fantastic way for us just to be welcomed into the community. When we look at what we did in 2023, we had 50 bikes at 50 stations. Over the course of our 120 days of operation, which was a partial season, we accumulated just over 3,000 trips, taken by about just over 1,200 unique riders. And as Alfred alluded, that culminated in just over 20,000 miles ridden across the system. The map that is depicted in the background just shows at least the footprint of where those stations were located in the community. And when we look at ridership across those stations, our number one station, at least for the first partial season, was at Glenshire Legacy Trailhead. That accumulated over 500 trips. And I think a stat that really stood out in my mind, there's two ways to interact with the program and use it. You can purchase a monthly pass, or else you can just pay per trip. If you're somebody just visiting town, a single ride pass is probably the route for you to go. But if you're somebody that lives in Truckee or comes to Truckee frequently, a monthly pass is a more economical route. And 41% of our trips this first partial season were taken by monthly members. And like I said, that kind of chart behind indicates at least where the checkouts across our stations in the system. And again, this shows at least just another way to look at the ridership trips by month, for the 120-day season. As we alluded, we really launched just before the 4th of July weekend, and then tapered off into October, with the system really officially shutting down October 27th. And then when we look at how people are riding in terms of the popular times within those time periods, we really see that Saturdays is the most popular day of the week to ride. And then what you see of those bar charts that represent time of day. So we oftentimes see really our ridership starting to pick up in Truckee around, just starting to wake up around that 6:30 to 7 a.m. And then ridership was peaking kind of in that midday, really peaking kind of early afternoon, and then tapering off in the evening. We are a 24/7 system, so people can check out and return bikes at any point in time. With being a self-service system, we can really support that with the team that we have. And then this actually shows, I think the prior map I showed where the stations were located in Truckee. This is a graphic showing where people are actually riding. So for users that use our system, they can opt in to share their GPS tracking with the mobile app checkout. So this gives at least a representation for people that shared location services with us. It's an anonymized view of where people were riding. So you can see that we really extend beyond our footprint. I kind of overlaid the station map with the route map. You can kind of see as we bounce between. So we do have primarily a core of stations in that central spine, also the Glenshire Path Trail up ahead on the upper right, but we can see that people are really extending beyond just the station footprint as they explore and get around Truckee. And then when we look at least, so we, from my vantage, at least from B-Cycle, it's been a great initial kickoff to bike share in Truckee. When I look at 2024, some program objectives that I'm really looking at, we're excited to have a full season of service. So we launched, as I alluded, right at the beginning of July. We are doing everything we can, Mother Nature pending, to really be in a position to launch strong as soon as the snow really comes off. So targeting for a full season, hopefully starting in May. Some additional things that we're looking at, it was great to have that partial season underneath our belt, because already we can see certain stations are high demand and there's other stations that didn't get as much ridership as maybe initially expected. So we are working with Alfred to optimize station locations, to really take stations that aren't really serving riders at the same level and relocating those to where there might be more existing demand for our services. We also are excited to take what was the initial start of bike share and use that to leverage expanded partnerships with businesses and also driving more rider activations. And then additionally, we've taken some of our successes in 2023, and we're trying to now apply those to what might be areas that we don't currently serve that could replicate some of the high ridership success we've seen in some of our particular stations. So working to explore potential pilot options where we might be able to trial bike share in new locations in the Truckee region based off of where we've seen ridership demand in 2023. And I guess I want to first, this is my contact information, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that any of you all might have. I do want to give recognition. I am just the guy in Waterloo, Wisconsin that helps oversee the program and serves any needs I can from a remote perspective. Our real operational lead on the ground is a gentleman named Joseph Tomer, and he's actually he's based in the Truckee, California area. He's just based the way our program works up. It is a seasonal operation. So Joe is not actually working for us in the off season, but he is local to Truckee and is really the best point of contact locally. And then we also have another employee, Sawyer, who was really instrumental to just the success of the program initially, getting it off the ground. And the picture here, this is from our launch day as well. So we have Joe, we have Alfred in the middle, and then these are some of the folks that came in from B-Cycle, Wisconsin, but also from our operation and other operations in California to really help launch the program. I mean, I just want to thank Alfred for his leadership. From a staff perspective, it's never easy launching bike share, but I will say that Alfred has probably been one of the easiest people that we've gotten the opportunity to work with in terms of just going through the process and always helping us understand what we can do to make this a success from the town's perspective, but also lending a hand where he can to make this process easy for us to navigate and proceed forward. And that's at least what I had prepared for my presentation. But as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Thank you very much, Brian. Alfred, did you have anything else to add to close things out?
No, I would just echo the feelings mutual. They've been a great partner. I did launch one of these in Park City. It was a different vendor. They've been great. Meaning B-Cycle, the fact that these systems have evolved a lot where they can just pull this whole system out. They demobilize the whole system within the town within a matter of days. So that gives us the flexibility to look at other sites and where we could redeploy systems throughout the community, which was not the benefit that I had in my other program. They were hardwired in, they were fixed, they didn't move. The other thing I would point out is that Glenshire number is pretty astronomical, and it just shows us this is not made for just the visitor. That is some of the perception here. We've also personally talked to a lot of bike shops. They've been not threatened by this system either. And I think that was something we wanted to make sure that we massaged very well. And I think it's been very successful just because we found the right vendor and the right partnership. And they've done a great job.
Thank you very much. And Alfred, you're great to work with, as he said, and you can do interviews and ride bikes because we did a great interview with Good Day Sacramento on these, as did Joe from B-Cycle. So you can do it all, I guess. And since we have Brian on Zoom right now, I will open this up for questions or comments from council on this item, and we'll open up public comment, and then we'll go to our two town presentations. Councilmember Klofstad, or do you have any questions or comments on this?
Yeah, a couple questions, and obviously very excited for the success of this program. So I understand that this is great data analysis that you were able to accomplish with this. Do you have an idea of what you want to change? Just to give our community a little teaser for what's coming.
Yeah, great question. So I will say that certainly working closely with Alfred on this too, I think we just want to make sure whatever we're proposing works from the town's perspective. Some locations that I'm interested in trying to serve. I know we've explored potentially new stations up at there's an area that and Alfred, I apologize, I'm going to forget the name of it. There was a location that was a kind of a trailhead location a bit north of the downtown. When we initially viewed that, when we did our cellular signal testing, it looked like that might be an area that was a bit more challenging for us initially, so we didn't initially put that on the map. I know we're interested to see if that would be a suitable location to expand to in the coming season. And I apologize, I might pause, Alfred, if you know offhand.
Yeah, that's fine. It was the Trout Creek Trailhead. And at the time, too, we were working through some land use table updates, too, that would allow for these stations to be on private property and other commercial areas outside of the right of way. So that also opens up other opportunities. But that was a key location that we've looked at, and a highly visible location also.
Yeah, I know there's some additional like expansions for some of our higher performing stations. So, for example, Donner Pass at the Roundhouse, we were just looking to grow that incrementally. There's also another location, Jaboom at Truckee Way Roundabout. Again, trying to just add capacity to that. We are still looking if there's some additional newer station locations we could pursue. One that we've started conversations with, it's technically a different municipality, but the Martis Valley Trail is one that if you recall the ridership map that I showed already, we're seeing people are just naturally riding along that trail. It's a beautiful facility, and there's been a lot of enhancements in that area. We would love the opportunity to see if we could pilot a station along that trail, because it looks like it's already a place where people are wanting to access and ride, and we think there could be some connectivity in that area. So I know we're currently working to see if we could get approval to pilot something in the next season. As we look, I mean, the other thing I will say that at least for us, we're also looking to optimize. So there's a couple locations where we didn't see the ridership, at least out of the gates, that would warrant keeping some of the stations at the level. So we are looking to shrink some stations, and also there's a couple stations that we are looking to close. So we have the Drink Coffee Do Stuff Plaza location is right next to an existing. We have 2 stations right in that area. We were looking at relocating some of those docks. There's an additional station like at Meadow Park. We're looking to shrink a little bit and move those stations elsewhere where they might get higher use. And then there's another, there's a couple other locations we're exploring as well that might be shrinking, at least from where we initially had them this year. But I'm happy to follow up with any more details as we kind of go through that planning process.
No, that's great. That's exactly what I was looking for. I noticed that there wasn't a lot of use in that Tahoe Donner area, and I imagine that the Trout Creek Trail, the top of it, would be a very popular destination. So thank you very much.
You bet.
Vice Mayor Pallaby?
Yeah, one question, one comment, and actually tease right off what you were just talking about, Brian. So it doesn't look like these bikes had a GPS like turnoff at our borders, as some of like the scooter programs and other things sort of do. Like you were allowing them to cross into Placer County, for example.
Yes,
Yeah.
the bikes themselves, the electronics that really power the system is actually through the user's the phone in the mobile app. So we actually invest in the station. So the docks themselves is kind of what the technology that controls access to the program. But once a user has a bike checked out, they're allowed to ride that wherever they'd like. Ultimately, it's their responsibility to return it back to one of our docking stations.
That's great. And so I think that was one thing I was going to mention when I saw your heat map. I was like, wow, they're using the bike path out there. And my only comment would be similar to the microtransit conversation that we've been having, which are, being able to access some of these recreational amenities that TARC Connect, for example, isn't servicing, whether that's Sawtooth, whether that's the new Martis Valley Trail, whether that's getting up into Tahoe Donner a little more, or Glenshire Clubhouse, things like that, to start to see how that could start to expand some of that access to the places people want to go on them. So that was interesting. And then was there any user survey? Like, were most people just joyriding? Is that generally the purpose, or were they using them for purposeful trips, or do we have any sort of insight into that, Alfred or Brian, whoever?
I can jump in and I'll say first, I apologize. I don't know. I don't have that prepared offhand. I know that I'd be happy to follow up. I don't know if we actually did a survey yet, or if that was something that was still in the works. In most of our programs, that survey that we do is typically sent out around this time. Given the ridership being 41% of those being actual monthly members, that's really kind of a key constituent base that we would want to get that feedback from in terms of utilization. We do a short survey more from a customer satisfaction following a rider's trip, where they just give us immediate feedback on that, and happy to share more data from that with Alfred. And like I said, Alfred, I can follow up. I don't know offhand what the plan was from a surveying perspective with regards to this first season.
They were gonna. This relationship is the town really is not paying for anything at all. So everything's kind of been managed through them. But they did do an end of season. They didn't do an end of trip like you do on Tart Connect or anything. So there is an end of season survey to start gathering kind of that information for trip purposes and so on.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm happy. I'm not the one from B-Cycle that conducts those surveys, so I didn't know the exact status, but happy to share those results with you, Alfred, and however that gets distributed.
Thank you. Councilmember Zabriskie?
The bar graph of the monthly trips shows a decline from July to August. Does the finer monitoring of trips tell a different story? And if it is a downward trend, can you hypothesize or speculate why?
Yeah, and I don't have more of a detailed analysis that I'm able to speak to at this point. I think we're really just trying to understand the seasonality of the business in Truckee. I think we all understand that it is a seasonal business in its nature. It's pretty hard, I think, to get too many conclusions just with such a short window that we had at least operational this year. At least my initial feedback is I would imagine that it would correlate with just the levels of traffic that you might be seeing in Truckee, with that seasonality. But like I said, I think we're gonna the next full season of data will give us a little bit more of a richer data set to compare and get a better understanding of trends that we see in the system. But I don't have anything more specific to share as far as insights right now.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Henderson, thank you for joining us. I don't know if you have any questions.
Well, thank you. Apologies for being a few minutes late this evening. I guess I just have one, and if you already covered it, just stop me. But in addition to the trip use, is the end of season also going to cover demographics amongst the riders, so we sort of understand which segments of our community are using in different ways?
I believe, Brian, I do believe that survey, that I did see the sample that did include that also, who's using it and what trip purpose, and then the demographics as well. Yes.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Appreciate that, Brian and Alfred. And I will open this item up for public comment. If anyone wants to make a comment on this B-Cycle presentation, please come on up to the podium. Seeing none, we will close public comment. Thank you again, Brian and Alfred.
Thank you. I congratulate. This is the most expeditious council meeting I've ever been a part of as a remote attendee. So you guys run a quick business. Thank you for the opportunity to be on the agenda.
You're welcome. We try to be efficient. We appreciate that. All right, up next we have item 5.2, and this is our code compliance update, and I believe Jenna will be presenting.
Good evening. Similar to what we did a couple weeks ago with our presentation on land use applications, you get to listen to a very exciting code compliance update this evening. Before I get into the main part of my presentation, it's probably important to understand kind of who are the code compliance folks and what does this look like. We have one full-time code compliance officer, that's Caitlin Safford. She came over from our police department a couple years ago when our other staff member, Carrie Tabor, retired for the first time. As you'll see, she's back on a part-time basis. She's what's called a retired annuitant. What that basically means is that she's limited to 960 hours each year, and we really do keep her here for those full 960 hours. And then there's 10% of my time that's budgeted to kind of oversee the code compliance program. We have somewhat of a unique philosophy in our program. It's really compliance versus enforcement. The idea there being that we look to or toward voluntary compliance rather than forcing people to come into compliance through enforcement, though that is an option or a pathway that we can travel if we don't see resolution with a specific case. We do try very hard to help people get into compliance, and oftentimes that involves other town departments, most notably planning. We spend a lot of time working hand in hand with our code staff, and then building, engineering, et cetera, STR program. We all are involved oftentimes in the case, depending on what the nature of the complaint is. What you see here up at the top in the circles are really all of the different types of cases that we see. Most of these are probably not a surprise. We have lots of cases related to unpermitted construction, land use violations. We see lots of unpermitted ADUs. We will occasionally see dangerous buildings that we have to go through an abatement process with, and I'll actually show you one of those later tonight. And we'll see public nuisances, lots of sign violations. People put out signs not understanding that there's some regulations related to that. Trash is pretty common. We'll see stormwater violations, and I'll talk through one of those later. Less frequently, we'll see sort of maintenance or blight. But that does happen, and you'll see one of those as well. Illegal dumping, and then really kind of anything else that no one knows what to do with typically lands in our table. We are complaint driven for the most part, so we rely on our community members to let us know if they're seeing something that appears to not be right. Though we do have an ongoing effort where we're just driving around throughout town during inspections and site visits. And if we see something, then we can open a case as well. But for the most part, we are complaint driven. There's a number of different ways that we'll receive complaints, see, click, fix. Other town divisions might see something going on. The short-term rental program is fairly common because they'll come upon a rental that doesn't have a permit for something, so we work with them as well. Goodness. And then what I'm going to touch on very briefly are just kind of what are we most commonly seeing. You'll see that over half of our cases are building code. So that could be anything where someone doesn't actually have a building permit and they've started construction, or things that are not built to code. Those are over half of our cases. We've got 28% currently as an unpermitted ADU, which is pretty shocking given that that's a single type of code violation. So I think we all recognize there are lots of unpermitted ADUs in the town of Truckee, and we're working to get those permitted. It's very, very easy to do so at this point. The state of California has really created a pathway to get those permitted. And we're working really hard because those are typically occupied units as well. And then less common are the land use zoning and then stormwater. Those are kind of 19% total. On the right side of the screen, you'll see a bit of an eye-popping number. We currently have 171 open code cases right now. And those are being handled by those 1.5 staff members that you see at the front, Caitlin and Carrie. Sorry for calling you a half of a staff member. So that's a pretty big number. And a number of these go back for years. As much as we would all like to think that these get resolved really quickly and that people are on board and wanting to get them resolved, that's often not what we see. And we have some that drag on for years. And then some that have really entered into a punitive phase where we've got administrative fines and citations, receiverships, et cetera. So we tend to ramp up the longer something doesn't get resolved. And then just at the bottom, sort of why do we see this? Why don't things get resolved? Someone calls in a complaint and they think that it'll be resolved immediately. Like I said, that doesn't always happen. What we really see is there's, a certain number of design professionals out there, and they have limited capacity, and they may not be able to take on a project right away and work to get it permitted. So there's oftentimes a delay just in when someone can even find someone to help them. We also have weather-related issues. We have a timeline between when construction is allowed. That's generally in the summer months, spring, summer, and fall. And then, when we aren't able to do construction, which is the rest of the year. And that's really related to our wet season and when we start running into issues with erosion and water quality. Oftentimes we have property owners that don't live in Truckee, so they're trying to work on resolving a case from outside of the area, and that just has inherent challenges. They may not be available to come here for a site visit. They may not even pick up the phone, answer their mail, etc. We also often see properties that change hands, and then the new purchaser didn't necessarily do all the due diligence and understand what was legal or not legal, so they inherit a code case and they may not even be aware of it. So we almost have to start over and explain what the issue is and then work with that new owner on a time frame to come into compliance. And then oftentimes, like I mentioned, the ladies will work with our staff in planning, and there's a series of entitlements that might be required to actually permit whatever the violation is. And then that's an additional time frame that they'll have to go through with us. And then probably not a surprise, but oftentimes people are not willing to abate a code violation. And there's an extended process that we'll have to go through in that type of a situation. And then lastly, occasionally we have people that pass away. And so then we have to go through kind of who is the next owner of that property. So this is really kind of the behind the scenes stuff that we don't often display in public. But as you'll see, we have a pretty robust code compliance program here at the town. And then what you see here is the general kind of flow chart for what a case looks like. And it really starts at a complaint. And we work very hard to verify that complaint. It's not a surprise, but sometimes people will complain about something that's actually not a violation. And so we have to make that determination first. If there isn't a violation, then that's really where it stops. And we'll let the complainant know, we've investigated and there's no complaint. We will not be pursuing a case. More often than not, it is a valid complaint. And so you kind of end up going through the flow chart. The blue areas that you see are really where a lot of work happens on behalf of Caitlin and Carrie. There's extensive research that needs to be done, especially if it's a case of, an illegal unpermitted work. We have to go through assessor records. We have to go through all our building records, land use entitlements, to really determine, what was permitted. Is it an illegal ADU? Was it a storage area? And now it's an ADU. And there's a lot of work that goes into that because we want to be certain of the violation. And then what happens is kind of a two-pronged process. We can issue a stop work order, and that happens if we see the work immediately. It's a life safety issue, and we will red tag it. And that'll be done through Carrie and Caitlin and or our building division, where, we essentially order the people doing the work to stop because we don't know what they're doing, how safe it is or not. And then there's sort of a nicer pathway where we'll give someone, and I use nice in quotes, a notice of violation where we're basically sort of recording something against the property so that, and if the property does change hands, then there's an opportunity for a future owner, if they're going through bank lending, to be made aware that there's an issue with their property. And then really what happens from that point is we work with the owner to figure out what they would like to do. There may be an opportunity to permit the work if that's possible, and we will certainly always explore that with them. And then in some instances, they may just elect not to permit it, or it may be something that they've done that there isn't an actual permit pathway. And so we'll work on what those different options look like. And then if they decide to permit it, like I mentioned, they'll submit an application either to building and or planning, and they'll go through that process. And then once that's been resolved, we'll close out the case. What you see in the red is the more difficult pathway, and this is where we're not getting compliance, and this really moves us into enforcement. And this is where we send repeated notices to the property owner of the violation, and then we will issue citations. So that's a fine, that's money, and that monetary value increases as compliance doesn't happen. And then we'll get into recording of actual documents against a property. And then lastly, you'll see we suck Andy into this, our town attorney, and we've had to do that very rarely, but that does happen on occasion. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go into some of the juicy details of cases that we have either currently or in the near recent past. What you see on the left is a 2018 aerial image of a property out on Union Mills Road. This is actually after a code compliance case had been closed out. This started earlier as a code compliance case, extensive illegal construction, extensive grading, none of which was permitted. And we worked with the property owner to get some things permitted and to do a fair amount of restoration and repair of the site. And then in 2023, we were alerted to additional work. So you'll kind of see what's going on in 2023. This is the same property. What we now have are what I would say are numerous unpermitted structures and uses and improvements that are happening on the property. There is a livestock barn that's been constructed, a basketball court, a saloon, bar, and what we're calling pond cabanas, and I'll have some pictures of that. We have a 30-foot tall ski jump that's been installed, and then there's an unpermitted operation of a summer camp that's been going on. So we're currently working with this owner again. This is a repeat customer of ours. And some of these cannot be approved based on the zoning and or height limitations and or just what's an allowed use within the zoning. And then there might be some opportunities to keep some of this work. So what you're seeing here is the saloon. I believe this is a shipping container that's been modified. There's a basketball court down at the bottom. This is the ski jump. Is that correct? This is an Airstream trailer on the second floor, I think, of a structure. That is an Airstream trailer, correct? Yep. I'm not sure what the trailer's being used for, but it's an Airstream trailer. And then this is, we're not sure, but shipping containers. So lots of stuff has been going on out here, and we're working on it. And this type of abatement is extensive, I would say. Just in terms of trying to get this property brought back into compliance again. This is out by Donner Lake. This is an unpermitted 3-story play structure is sort of how we're approaching this. It's got a spiral staircase, a cantilever deck, and a sliding glass door. It doesn't have any building permits, so anything this tall and with these types of amenities without question requires a building permit. So we're working with this owner to try to resolve these issues. This isn't really a structure that can be permitted based on our codes, or at least as it currently exists. So we're working through that one as well. There's a house underneath this snow, and this is in our historic district. This is a actual historic resource. It's been determined that it was built in 1894. Our owner is a disabled veteran, and as you may recall, last year we had a lot of snow, and this home essentially got buried. The owner was away for some amount of time and was also not necessarily capable of doing this snow removal by themselves. And we started running into concerns with the structural integrity of the home, the roof system, and would it be able to accommodate this amount of snow load? And in a pretty rare act of code compliance efforts, we red tagged this property and we evicted the owner out of concerns that this was not a safe structure to occupy. On top of that, we were aware that there were likely hoarding conditions inside the residence, so we had to work through that as well. What you're seeing here are pictures of the inside of this residence. I won't really go into the details, but this is not safe. And we spent many months, years, working to get this home into a habitable state. It did not previously have running water, heat, functional plumbing, and there were holes in the roof. So we've spent a lot of time on this. You may recall Caitlin and Carrie received an employee incentive award for their work. This is the property that they received that award for. So this is a true example of the impact of code compliance in the town of Truckee, and I'm super proud of these ladies. Then we have something called the snowball effect. So something that starts out as a very minor complaint turns into something quite extensive and potentially unsafe. What you'll see here is it initially started as a report of unpermitted work in the town right-of-way, typically not something super crazy. And when we went out, our code staff did confirm that there had been a radiant heat system installed in the concrete in the town's right-of-way, so private improvements installed within the public right-of-way is not allowed. And then that really opened up the window to our ladies doing their, as I mentioned, their research and sort of what's going on with the property. That revealed that the property is a permitted STR with a bed and breakfast certificate through the town for a single bedroom within that home. And then further research that they conducted revealed that the unconditioned basement, so again, not a habitable space where someone would be living, had been converted to living space by the prior owner. And then that space was rented as a STR, and it had no interior access to the main dwelling, did not have proper egress, had an unknown heating source, and was not permitted to be as a habitable living space. So again, something that started out as a complaint in the right-of-way turns into a pretty significant safety concern for people being inside that space. So you can see here kind of the basement, how it used to be, sort of non-habitable space. On the left in the 2017 MLS photo has now been converted to a habitable space and is being rented out through the town's STR program, which we're remedying as well. No surprise, we have the occasional illegal cannabis grow, even though cannabis has sort of been legalized in a different way. We've seen lots of these in the past. Really what this boils down to is someone illegally growing commercial cannabis well beyond what's allowed by the state of California, which is just 6 plants. This person had what used to be known as a previous prescription for up to 99 plants. That has changed back in 2016. But what they did is they had a commercial grow and they installed all of the infrastructure illegally, all the electrical amenities needed to grow that many plants. And they had a fire. So that is something that we responded to along with building. I mentioned stormwater violations. These vary. We've had, actual discharges to Donner Lake, even just the past couple weeks, where you've got untreated water that is running in an untreated manner into Donner Lake directly through a culvert. We will have BMPs that are not installed properly, so there'll be illicit discharges that happen as a result of those. And then occasionally we have folks that really take it upon themselves to kind of alter their landscape, and they'll do things like create a rock and log dam that basically obstructs a natural water flow, and that they'll do that to create kind of like a landscape and water feature on their property. So lots of different variety that we see here with stormwater, and on all of these we're working very closely with our engineering division. And then I mentioned this is a unique case, and this building no longer exists. This is the former Alpine Country Lodge out across from Taco Bell, right near Coldstream, the entrance to Coldstream. And I mentioned the word nuisance. This had essentially become a nuisance for a number of reasons, not the least of which is it was a place where people were taking up shelter inside the building. This was a boarded up prior hotel, and it became a site for graffiti and damage and occupation and whatnot, probably indoor fires and all kinds of other things. So Carrie worked on this for, a long time. And this went into the realm without question of enforcement. And we eventually had this property demolished, and there was a potential receivership option that was here, and really got to a point where we mandated that the property be demolished, as you can see here on the left, and then it sits vacant today, ready for its next opportunity. So I won't be all Debbie Downer on you, because I usually am. We do have success stories, and as I mentioned, this is our same historic house in the downtown. As I mentioned, without question, this is a success story for our code program. We mentioned this, I think, during the incentive award. There was a GoFundMe campaign organized by some really creative community members that has raised over $32,000 to help this property owner get his house in a habitable state. Most importantly, getting a roof, or at least a temporary roof that's watertight for this coming season. And then we'll be working on getting a full re-roof next year. And the success is that the property owner who we essentially evicted is now back in this house and able to be working on making appropriate improvements to his home. So we have lots on our plate. We've got some other nuisance properties that I didn't highlight. We've got a lot of illegal ADUs out there that we're working on, and more are coming in almost every week. We've kicked around the notion of trying to ramp up our historic preservation code compliance program, really recognizing that there's a limited number of historic buildings in the town of Truckee, at least currently, and some of those are being neglected through kind of a demolition by neglect process, and there's a lot we could be doing there. And then we've got all kinds of thoughts on signs and outdoor displays. That's kind of a moving target. And then really just being proactive with respect to blight and property maintenance issues. So not necessarily waiting for a complaint to come in, but really trying to get in front of those before they become worse. That's all I've got. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have some at the end of today's presentations.
Thank you very much, Jenna, and great work, Caitlin and Carrie. We will go to the town manager report next and then come back for any questions on both of those items.
Great, thank you. I do have a few updates tonight and start off on a positive note and congratulate Erica Mertens. May have seen there was an article in the Sierra Sun that Erica was nominated by a number of community members for her work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so she received the Community Collaborative's Chris Bain Award. I feel like I'm going to say that wrong, so I apologize if I did. But this is an honor for those who advocate for cultural competency, equity, and social justice in our community. And Chris was remembered as a founder and longtime director of the United Community, formed in response to the growing racial tensions on the North Shore in the 80s. He was an enthusiastic collaborator who had a powerful voice for the Latinx community, teaching cultural competency and demanding social equity. I want to congratulate Erica on that recognition, and also Maddie Lay, who received the Community Collaborative's Public Service Award for Excellence. She's the coordinator at Adventure Risk Challenge. And then Anne Rarick, who you, I think, all have met at this point, and she is managing our COAD program that's Community Organizations Active in Disaster. So great awards for all of those ladies, and we appreciate the work that they're doing. And then I also wanted to recognize that our TART Connect hours are entering into winter service and holiday hours. So we have TART Connect going from 6:30 to 12 a.m. through the end of April. And then for the holiday week, which is the 26th through the 1st, they'll be extending until 1:30 in the morning. So if you're going out to get drinks or enjoy the downtown and have dinner, don't worry about driving and parking. Hop on a TART Connect and you'll be worry-free for the night. Our ridership has increased by approximately 100 riders already in December. So we're seeing great participation for that, and we're excited about that. And then our mobility hub will begin to have service located out of there very soon. That includes Placer TART, and that'll happen in the next few days. So you'll start seeing some activity down there. I do want to point out that our fixed route transit is not operating on Christmas Day. So use TART Connect, that will be operating. Fixed route will not. Also, this is the last Friday this week for Festive Fridays, so come downtown. I think it's Sip and Shop date night, so enjoy those festivities and support our local businesses. And then lastly, Town Hall is closed the full week of the 25th. We will reopen on the 2nd, so if you have business you want to do that you need to come in person or call anybody at Town Hall, We won't be open. We do have staff that will be working, but they aren't going to be manning the counters or the phones. Our police is open and our public works crews will be operating, as well as the animal service. So hope everybody has a great holiday. Be safe and be happy, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you very much, Jen. All right, with that, any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Henderson?
I just want to thank all of the code compliance work that you guys do. I mean, it's a huge job. It's often a really thankless job, and you work so incredibly hard. And I think some of the examples that Jenna gave are just really show the impact that you're having in our community, which is really, really beneficial. Thank you.
Councilmember Zabriskie?
I just have two questions for Jenna. One, Jenna, on the ADUs, that they represent 28% of the code violations. I was trying to get that into an absolute number, and I was wondering, is it just 28% of the 171 open cases, which would be about 48, I think.
I think this is just in general, they're about 28%. And this 171 varies day to day. That's my understanding, right, ladies, that it's just on average 28% of our cases are solely attributable to illegal ADUs.
And you know what the absolute number is then?
That we have open right now?
Yeah,
I don't, but we could get that to you.
Okay. And then the other thing, you mentioned that often there's a code compliance issue that comes up during a real estate transaction. There'll be a change in property ownership. Is there any way we could accelerate the point in the code compliance process where the buyer would receive notice that the property's in violation before the list pending stage arrives?
I mean, the main way we do it is through notice of a violation that we record against the property. So if the person buying the property is using any kind of lending, that'll get flagged, and typically their lender will catch wind of it, and that'll hold up the sale. If someone's paying cash, our process, they could just say, I don't care. They don't have a bank that cares, and they may just inherit that violation. But we do tend to be pretty aggressive on recording an NOV if we think that property is changing hands or it's really egregious, and we want to make sure if it does sell that a future owner is made aware.
Okay, so it does happen pretty
Yes.
early in the process.
It can, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pallavi?
Yeah, just a quick question for Jen. Are building inspections available the week that we're closed, the 25th through the 1st, in case people were to request inspections?
Yeah, they can call and schedule them ahead of time.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. And then mostly just a comment for Carrie and Caitlin. As a local business owner with numerous experiences with both of you and over the years, and speaking on behalf of our local business community, I think, at least some of us, maybe we won't say thank you in the same way that other council members have, but I would say your evenness and your fairness are much to be applauded, and the way that you go about your jobs is really incredible. And I think I'm more being honest about that because it isn't an easy job. You're generally interacting with angry people who are going to be mad at you for what you are doing for whatever reason. And so your abilities to always maintain that even keel and be fair, I think is really incredible. So thank you for that.
Councilmember Cliffstead?
Yeah, I'll add to that. It really is amazing what you guys have to deal with, and that you do it with such grace and dignity. And it's really wonderful to celebrate some of those successes because I know they're pretty rare. But the ones that were shown tonight and a few others that I'm aware of are deeply moving and really show the commitment that you have to this community. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. I will echo what my fellow council members have said. You two are incredible. Thank you for all your efforts. Jenna, thank you for sharing this. This was a really interesting presentation, and seeing some of the pictures that you go out and see on a daily basis is just eye-opening. So thank you. Keep up the good work, but hopefully maybe it can slow down because everyone's going to follow the rules. That would be positive. We'll keep our fingers crossed. With that, I will open it up for public comment on either of these presentations. If anyone has a public comment, please come on up to the podium. Seeing none, we will close public comment. Thank you very much. All right, with that, we will move into our consent calendar. We have 6 items. I will read through them first. Item 6.1, minutes of the November 28th, 2023 regular town council agenda. Item 6.2, Truckee Home Access Program budget amendment. Item 6.3, town manager performance-based pay increase, 2023. Item 6.4, easement abandonment for the Tahoe Donner downhill ski area at 11585 Snow Peak Way, 16363 Ski Slope Way, and 15135 Ski Slope Way. Item 6.5, the Dark Skies Awareness Campaign and Lighting Rebate Grant Program. And item 6.6, the Emergency Warming Center. Would any member of council like to pull an item off the consent calendar?
Mayor, at the risk of interjecting very awkwardly here, I think you have to read the full recommendation for the town manager.
Oh,
Quite right.
thank you, town manager. All right, so the full recommended action for item 6.3, I will go back, that council approve resolution 2023-67, awarding a 6% increase in base pay to the town manager, Jennifer Callaway, resulting in an annual pay amount of $233,245.22, effective October 26, 2023. With that, would anyone like to pull any item off consent?
I don't want to pull an item, but I would like to make a comment. I can wait, or I can do it now if you'd like.
Maybe wait. We'll see if
Perfect.
any items are going to be pulled, and then
Thank
I'll
you.
look to you. Would staff like to pull any items off the consent calendar?
No, Mayor.
Would any member of the public like to pull any items off the consent calendar? Seeing none, I will bring it back up here. Before a motion, Councilmember Henderson, did you have a comment?
I did. I know that so often we gloss through our consent calendars, and I thought this one was really amazing, especially given that there's not a ton of items on it. So I just wanted to call out, the success that we're continuing to see in the Truckee Home Access Program and expanding funding on that. Getting more homes deed restricted for our local workforce is a huge accomplishment. I think we should all be proud of that. I really want to recognize Jen's just exemplary service and dedication to this town and our entire community. You go above and beyond. I feel like every day, nights, weekends, you are always there for a phone call. I'm constantly in awe of the capacity that you seem to have to do it all and to be in so many places. So thank you for your service. I also, I'm really excited about our Dark Skies initiative. I know we started that this past fall, and being able to hopefully, assuming we approve consent, move forward with that. I think that that's going to the momentum for that is going to continue to grow, and I'm thankful for the support we've had on that. And then also the Emergency Warming Center. We have unhoused members of our community who desperately need shelter, and I'm excited that the town is stepping up to contribute to that. So I just wanted to recognize those items. And with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and I second all your comments. All right, with that, we are going to move on to our item 7.1, our council reorganization. I'm going to wipe the tears away from my eyes. This is my last meeting as mayor. And so at this time, it's our opportunity to, I will put it out there, would someone like to make a motion or a nomination for our next mayor?
I would be honored to nominate Vice Mayor Pallavi to once again assume the mayorship.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
All right, that passes 4-1. Thank you very much. So with that, I will officially pass the gavel and we'll switch seats, or we'll do that after break. Okay. And it's all on you now, Mayor Pallavi.
Thank you.
Great to have the gavel back in hand, yes. It's been for 4 short years, apparently.
With that, we will make a selection for our vice mayor. Any nominations for vice mayor?
I would like to make a nomination, but if you would so give me a moment, I would like to just make a few comments, if that's okay, before I make a nomination. Mayor?
If they're your mayoral comments, I think we'll do that in a second.
No, it's
Okay.
about
Please do
vice
so.
mayor.
Please do so.
So yeah, I just want to start out by saying everyone up here on the dais is incredible, and I'm so proud and honored to serve with all of you, and everybody does an amazing job. I did want to highlight that it has been a tradition, a norm, a precedent set that all of those people that are elected by the people of Truckee have an opportunity to serve in a leadership role if they so desire. And this has been an opportunity that's been provided to folks regardless of their background, their experience, their viewpoints, or their skill sets. I support continuing that tradition tonight. And I know that 4 of us up here have had the opportunity to serve in a leadership role so far. And so I would like to make a motion that Jan Zabriskie would serve as our next vice mayor.
Thank you. Any seconds? Okay.
I will second.
Thank you. We'll do a voice vote, I suppose. So we have nomination for Councilmember Zabriskie to be vice mayor, and we will all in favor.
Before you actually take the vote, as with anything else, you do need to see if anybody wants to offer public comment.
Public comments. We're opening public comment. Thank you. Did we not do that on the first one, or we were okay there?
Yeah, we just kind of got past it.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. If anybody would like to make a public comment on the first selection or this selection, come on up. Seeing none, we will close public comment and we'll go for a voice vote. So all in favor of Vice Mayor Zabriskie, or Councilmember Zabriskie, assuming Vice Mayor, speak.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And anybody opposed? Abstain? Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, so that passes 3 in favor. We had Councilmember Henderson, Councilmember Zabriskie, and Councilmember Romack. So that was 3 with 2 abstentions. Okay, so we're good. So we have our new reorganization. Thank you very much for all of that. We will move on to some comments. So I think the council member Romack will head up to the podium, and then I will join you up there in a moment.
Okay. Thank you all. You all know I love the microphone, so that's why I got to make lots of comments. I just want to start out by saying thank you to every single person in this room, whether it's the first time you've come to a council meeting or if you're here every time, like many of our staff and our council members. It's been an incredible honor to serve as mayor of this wonderful town. I feel like I'm going to start to cry, and I'm not normally an emotional person. But yeah, it's been an incredible opportunity. To my fellow council members, I've really appreciated each one of you has provided input, feedback, insight at various points throughout my tenure, and I've really taken it to heart and appreciated. I may not have listened to everything you always offered up to me, but I appreciated that you took the time and you saw the value in that. And I know some of you have gone before, so you could give experience from that perspective, and I also really appreciated that as well. To staff, same goes for you. Every single one of you has been able to help whenever a question arises. I call Hillary last minute because someone's calling from the Tahoe Weekly and has a question, jumps on the phone. So just really appreciate every single staff member. It's been fantastic to serve as mayor. And then to the community members, it's been a pleasure. I've appreciated all the conversations I've had with folks. We've had a lot of them over the past year, and I'll highlight a few of the things we've worked on. But thank you for being passionate. And then I will thank my family. My mom is here tonight. Thank her. She watches my son most nights. Luckily, my partner is home tonight, so he's with my son, so they're not here. But really appreciate the support from my family to be able to do this. And then I just wanted to highlight the incredible things we've all of us in this room have accomplished this year that I'm just exceptionally proud of. First of all, we celebrated 30 years as a town. I think that was really exciting and gave us an opportunity to look back at all the great things we've done. Then, of course, our general plan. We passed it in May. That took quite a while, and we paused it, and we had more community conversations. But I think, again, that was really a great opportunity for all of us to understand more of the thoughts and ideas from our community. So just really excited. And now that we're actually putting it into action is hugely exciting. Wanted to highlight our continued support of multimodal alternative transportation, how we hopefully are transforming our town. Alfred presented on B-Cycle earlier. That was a fun opportunity. Our TART Connect expansion, our mobility hub, additional work on our trail system. I think this is really an aspect of our town that I'm extremely proud of. It's going to take a big shift, but we're putting the pieces in place where we can change our culture and all get around town in a different way. Housing, Councilmember Henderson, you mentioned earlier the THAP program. Yeah, in the staff report, for those of you who didn't read it, we've now closed on 11 homes, soon to be 13. So these are members of our local workforce that are able to buy in our community, and those homes will stay dedicated to our local workforce for years to come. So again, incredibly innovative program that staff works so hard on. Just very excited about that, along with all of our other housing initiatives. I can't go through everything we've done, but the public art, our new artwork on Brockway Road, our fish statues, and then also wanted to highlight the work we've been doing on inclusivity, bringing everyone to the table, having new community events and new opportunities. I'm really proud of that as well. So thank you all for the opportunity to serve as Truckee's mayor. It's been an honor and it's been a pleasure. And I'll look forward to just moving back to being a council member.
We don't stand at the podium ever.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in so long. Lindsay, come on up. I'm proud to have known you for almost 20 years. Couldn't be prouder to honor you with the town gavel, which just pretend this is a town gavel in my hand. Town gavel didn't make it in time, so we're gonna hand you these beautiful flowers instead. But Lindsay, came into this job as easily the most famous out of all of us due to her previous career as a local radio DJ on her very own morning show, for those of you who didn't know, and so well known throughout the community as Lindsay with an A. But as of tonight, we will still know you as Lindsay with an A, but now you will now be the town of Truckee's former mayor and hopefully again future mayor for the town of Truckee. I'm going to read off just some of your incredible accomplishments. You read off the towns, but you should really be proud of a lot of what you accomplished over the past year. You were a very busy town official, always ready to step in and speak on behalf of all the great work that our staff, predominantly and more minorly the council, do every day of the year. So a quick list, and it goes on, so be patient. The what is R2SC? What does that fully stand for? I always mess that up.
Revitalization Steering Committee.
Steering Committee, thank you. The River Revitalization Steering Committee, that never one has worked for me. As well as serving on the RFP subcommittee that worked to select the consultant for the bigger project. You were on the ad hoc microtransit committee. You were on the council and commission code of conduct subcommittee. You were on the outdoor recreation ad hoc committee. You and I both served as the legislative correspondents to the state and always reviewing all of our state correspondences as they relate to our legislative platform. You were on the Nevada County Remote Access Network Board, which was a regional interest committee seat. You were, of course, the mayor-manager meeting designee. So for those who don't know, the mayor and managers from all three Nevada County incorporated cities and towns meet on a monthly basis. And you were the Mountain Housing Council regional seat as well. You pioneered, I think it was your idea, the Mobility All-Stars initiative, which encouraged the public use of TART Connect and really highlighted that program throughout the summertime. You met with our representatives, federal representatives and state. So federal representative Kiley, state representative Alvarado Gill. You participated in your Roots, doing all of your radio interviews, both for the Mobility All-Stars and Dark Skies. And of course, you presented the State of Truckee address to the Nevada County Board during their strategic planning efforts. Most importantly, I believe what you brought to this role was your outlook on life. It was your always can-do attitude. You conducted yourself with the utmost of professionalism, integrity, and you always had the respect for our constituents, and you got that respect back, which is really important. And you always had that at the forefront of everything that you did. Lindsay, I'm proud to have served alongside you. I hope to be able to replicate and continue all the amazing qualities you brought to the job. And thank you for your service to this community. And I look forward to our continued work together.
Thanks, Dave.
You get your flowers.
Look at this gavel.
Instead of the traditional gavel. So great job. Thank you. Hard shoes to fill. And with small shoes to fill. And with that, we're going to take a short break. Everybody, please join us. We have some cake in the back. Congratulate. What are we doing? Oh, sorry. We have council member comments. We're not going to take a short break yet.
Couple
of course you can. I sincerely apologize. I'm sorry. I'm not in the mode yet. You know, you just got to get going.
It'll come back fast.
Councilmember Henderson, start us off, please.
Okay. Well, former Mayor Romack, I just want to say what a year. We have accomplished so much as a council and as a community, and I'm so grateful for your leadership through all of it. I did prepare some words as well. I just want to say a few things. When I think about your leadership and your leadership style, there are a few character traits that made you a really, really effective mayor. You're collaborative, you're considerate, you're compassionate, you work so hard to find compromise amongst all of us up here, and that's not always an easy task. We can all be fairly strong-willed when it comes to issues that are really close to our heart. And yet you always took the time to search for that compromise, and that was really meaningful. You always find a way to inflect humor and levity. I mean, you've already done it this evening in just, the hour we've been here. And it's often when it's most needed, when we're having, very intense deliberations or when we are facing questions from the community about certain policies and things of that nature. You run meetings really efficiently, and this can be a really, really challenging thing to do, but you always find a way to keep us on track, to focus on the policy questions and discussion at hand. And this is a tremendous benefit to the public, to our hardworking town staff, and to the council itself. I think that most people want an efficiently run, well-organized town government, and I think that you really shone a spotlight on that. And then I also wanted to just highlight some of the examples have already been said, but I did want to note you got us over the finish line on the general plan. You managed so many meetings, hours and hours of public comment focused on that general plan, different conversations, negotiations. And under your mayorship, we adopted Truckee 2040. And that is truly a once-in-a-career moment for you, for everyone in this room that worked on that plan collaboratively. Mayor Pallavi, I'm going to have to get used to, as we change, Mayor Pallavi, mentioned your work on mobility and transportation. And I think, your work on the committees focused on those issues, but also you really model the use of public transit and using it for our communities. I don't know how many times you've said coming out of council, okay, is it before 10? Am I going to get a TART Connect? I mean, you take it everywhere you go, it feels like. And I think that's an amazing thing to model for our community. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight your dedication to inclusivity, to strong communication throughout the community, and to ensuring that all of our town services like transit and all the new innovative mobility work that we're doing actually reaches everyone who needs it and who wants it within this town. So I want to thank you for your leadership over the past year. It has been a tremendous honor serving with you. Serving as mayor, it's a huge undertaking. It does require more time. It requires more commitment. You have all the ribbon cuttings to attend. I mean, there's just so much more. So I know you're ready for it, Mayor Pallavi. You've been through it once before. But I just hope that you've enjoyed this time, that you look back on it really, really proudly, and that now you get a little bit of that downtime, especially as we head into the holidays and with your little kiddo. So congratulations.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie, take it away.
Lindsay, I feel like you've brought a special kind of charm, humility, and grace to the council. And I know that sounds funny to you, but our new mayor described it as you're having a particular outlook on life. And that does capture it even better. There's just something unique and special about your approach that just all has made us feel better and appreciate having you as a friend as well as a colleague. Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Klofstad.
Lindsay with an A. I had to bring up our different strengths because really why you were so successful as your radio personality and so successful as mayor is in your influencing. You bring communication skills and, of course, the all-important woo, which none of the rest of us bring. And we really benefit from having your woo as part of our team. And you've been kind enough to let us leverage it, and we will continue to do so. You also bring, in terms of relationship building, positivity and adaptability. And those have been incredibly beneficial in creating that trust and breaking down barriers within challenging projects or concepts or communications with the public. And it's also sincerely and deeply benefited both our team as well as the community and the relationship building that you've been able to bring there. So I just really am so grateful that you've been part of this team. You've taught me so much in those categories and in others, and really have enjoyed working with you and look forward to continuing, hopefully in a second term.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yes, I think we've all said enough, and we should go on to the break. But I really appreciate it.
Should eat cake. So with that, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 6:30, and thank you so much for your service, Lindsay. Okay, we will come back into session. Thank you all. Thank you for the wonderful celebration. Thanks to Aldana for the cake and whoever else helped with that. We're going to move into item 8.1, special events policy update. Alfred, it looks like you are taking this one. Welcome.
Thank you. Newly anointed honorable mayor, members of town council, and yeah, I'm switching hats here, so please forgive me. We are here to talk about special events and talk about a little bit of background, talk about how the process works right now, talk about some focus areas, and then seek some direction from council here and return back in a few weeks to return to council with some specific policy direction or changes. So background, and Dan, correct me if I misspeak, or the history here is it was a little bit of a forensics exercise on my part, kind of going through things. Kelly Beatty used to have my predecessor, used to manage this program, kind of going through some history and looking back. There was a lot of history leading up to the update in 2015. There was also some COVID activity in there that kind of obviously impacted some events. And then since that time, I've kind of come on board to the town and then trying to really kind of piece all this together. So the background is in 2008, there was a policy that was developed for special events. It was heavily focused on public safety. And then in 2015, the policy was re-looked at with more of a focus on economic development as well as continued public safety, and then kind of looking at the overall context of the community, community character, and how that integrated into the overall kind of a feel, and I hate to use the term brand of Truckee, but the lifestyle, if you will, and making sure that there was some consistency and some congruency in there. And then the final policy was adopted in 2018, and that's the policy that exists today and was included in the staff report as attachment. I believe it was attachment B, if I'm not mistaken. The purpose of that time, kind of digging through some of the notes and some of the documentation of the working group and so on that was part of that. This is verbatim out of the document that I pulled, but was to provide procedures and requirements for permitting certain events and activities within the town to ensure the health and public safety, to protect public property and minimize impacts from event activities and non-participating citizens. I think that kind of speaks true today. I think a lot of resort towns and mountain towns have really kind of dealt with kind of the influx of this and maybe some feelings of even event fatigue, as we refer to it in Park City. And we had this little thing called Sundance, so we really felt it there. But we have the same type of feelings here with these types of events that it's already busy during these times, and those can be compounded as well. But we also want to make sure that we're here to have a good time and enjoy our community. Currently, I won't walk through everything, but this is really kind of how the process works today. The process is functional. It does work very well. Everybody leading up to that 2018 adoption did a wonderful job. And again, having to work at an event process, very, very large events, as I mentioned, I have to say the town's process is very straightforward. It does function very well. We did want to focus on maybe some areas of improvement or seek some direction from council on where those might be. But the applicant comes in, and the events coordinator, that's my other hat, that's me. So that goes to me, and we take a look at it and review it, determine whether there's an event, if it triggers an event requirement. Sometimes it doesn't, in a lot of cases it doesn't. So there's certain criteria, whether it requires town resources, town right-of-way, or impacts. Could be a parking lot, could be a sidewalk, could be a closure. We have a review committee internally as well as externally. So we work with Truckee Fire, also check with CHP when warranted. So all those external partners is where, even Forest Service, when we have dirt fondo and those types of things, and make sure we, or gravel as it's referred to. And then ultimately the policy allows for, in certain criteria are met, Dan as Public Works Director or Town Engineer, and also Chief of Police, and then we get that sign off, and then I issue the permit or draft the permit for one of their signatures with permit conditions, and that goes to the applicant. The current state of events, this is highlighted in the staff report itself. So this is pulled directly out of that. Again, we don't have this really history of apples to apples because things have kind of come back, but historically, even before COVID, this was about the number of events we would typically permit in a given year. So there's peak season events too, and those are highlighted both summer and winter. So we require those to come in earlier, and those have different triggers as well, or different requirements. And there's a certain level of review there. New events we had last year that were permitted, we only had about 3, so not substantial. We do get a lot of inquiries from like filming or commercials and things like that. But the actual events that were permitted that were new last year were about 3, or were 3. Number of town sponsors events, that term kind of gets, is in the policy itself. Those are 4th of July parade and Veterans Day. And that constitutes an event where the town is essentially, yes, the sponsor, just as it says. Fees waived last year. Again, this is a little bit of an anomaly with that bulk of that number. But that's included in attachment C, which has the whole calendar of events on there and what's waived. Sometimes we'll waive the permit fee itself, our application fee. And then there's other fees that are waived that are minor in terms of some PD cost, or maybe not street closures, but any type of barricades or things like that might be allowable also. So something that we'll talk about in a second about with that threshold. And this was something that was, again, discussed last year when we brought forth the 4th of July fireworks, and that's what we're kind of bringing this back when that was discussed, and bringing those fee waivers forward. So focus areas on 2023, things have happened that were mentioned here as well tonight is the general plan adoption. So there is some things that are mentioned in the general plan itself in terms of community character, as well as economic development. There has been, not necessarily a growth in maybe the volume or number of events, but maybe the scale, the attendance has grown over time. Some of that is maybe perceived versus reality also, that it just feels busy sometimes. And then also then you throw a Truckee Thursday on there, it's hot down in the valley, people are up here. Those types of things that are just kind of things that kind of build onto that also. Looking at maybe improved administrative processes and cost recovery is something we've discussed also. Assigning the true cost, which we do right now as well, but to make sure that that's reflective of the true cost of the event in today's dollars, as well as the level of service that's required that may not have been required in the past. Whether it's the transit we talked about with 4th of July or Truckee Thursdays, additional PD that may be required, and just getting that true cost back and not really subsidizing that at the taxpayer's cost. And clarity of the policy to applicants, so we can direct them to a very, very clear process and policy, so they know what they're really embarking on before the event is submitted to us for review. Better understanding of what our community expectations really are, whether it comes to sustainability measures, recycling, so that they know what they're getting into, not in a bad way, but they're planning accordingly, and that we're setting the expectations. I won't read all of these, definitely not read all of these, but the alignment of the general plan, again, I want to just kind of bring this back about, where we're really trying to seek here is to get some alignment with the general plan. There's a lot of state mandates too right now that have come out in terms of recycling, food waste, and things like that as well. So to make sure that those are in alignment and to make sure that those are built into the policy themselves. And the previous ones were based on or come from the economic or the community character section. These come from the economic development portion of the general plan as well. And then also some sustainability measures under the CAP section as well, talking about reduced single use. And again, things that are coming forward in terms of styrofoam, single use water bottles, all those things that right now are kind of not really built into the policy, just essentially based on the time it was adopted as well. I won't kind of beat the dead horse here in terms of what the goals are, but again, looking to clarify, highlight, increase awareness. One thing we did at the 4th of July and the fireworks was a lot more public outreach as well, and working with the applicant, working with the Park and Rec and Park. We have great partners in terms of the rec district and also our TDMA folks as well. So really build on that. Look at venue limitations potentially also. Cost recovery rates. We do have some information that's highlighted in there. Essentially, it's something we would look at in terms of PD cost. Again, we're seeking direction tonight, not necessarily adoption of those. So that is an example of what we would look at to reset the baseline in terms of those costs. Again, and improve the submittal process as well and review process to make sure that really we're kind of have an internal interdisciplinary team, if you will, that looks at all of these in terms of Aaron's team and Keep Truckee Green, our folks. Talked to Drew again today as well. There's some stormwater requirements that maybe could be built in and highlighted more a little bit better within the policy itself that reference special events specifically within our municipal NPDES permit, which is National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. Sorry for the acronym. So things that we highlighted specifically in the staff report themselves is that new legislation and ordinance. I believe in January, the single use water bottle will be coming forward. So really just making sure that we're not have a policy over here that's not congruent with the policy over here, and making sure that we're really just being effective of turning that policy into practice. There is, within the current policy, talks about alternative transportation plans and options. The language in there is encourage and those types of things. Maybe there's an opportunity to really look at what's required in certain areas. And sometimes, most of the time, we do require that, but it's built in to the permit condition. Maybe the applicant didn't know that permit condition was coming and has to scramble or work with Truckee Trails and get the bike valet and everything like that. So we have built a lot of this just within the short time that I've been here, and the interaction with those applicants and building this into the process, but to make it more formalized. A discussion also within the staff report is a reference to Donner Lake area and put an event cap on that area. Right now there's 3 events down there, and they're highlighted within the staff report also, and to put a cap on there. Just looking at that public safety, environmental sensitivity, and just not only the community character of the town of Truckee as a whole, but just that neighborhood or area, if you will. I mentioned the stormwater requirements. See if there's an opportunity to build those in and how those can be more effectively implemented in terms of events that really kind of function on any given day when you have 2 or 3 or 4, 5,000 people. Almost like a small town in one area real quick. I mean, that intensification occurs in small areas. Cost recovery, it is highlighted in there too that we would increase the application fee. That would also essentially raise the threshold of what would have to come to council just based on inflation since the time it was adopted. So that's really a basis for that. And that's highlighted in the staff report. Updating staff rates and also equipment rates. The table that's snipped out of here was highlighted in the staff report. And what we would look at, and just as an example, would be to increase the true cost of the PD cost, which is salary and benefits. That what is shown in the staff report is the highest amount at the highest rate of what that officer is tenured at. So what we would do and have historically done too is to look at the cost, which is actually billed during that time and the amount of hours at that rate, and then we invoice back the applicant at that time. So they are working under the assumption that it would be the maximum, and then we submit a request for reimbursement based on the true cost so that there is actuals and there is a backup for it also. So that is the recommendation.
Yeah, and just a couple of follow-up comments. I think from a philosophical, so we get a lot of questions of when do you have to get a special event permit? And it's really, there's 2 criteria. One is if the nature of the event that's being sponsored is such that it requires additional town resources to be dedicated to that event to make sure that it can function properly. That's usually the police department, sometimes support from the public works department if it relates to road closures and those kinds of things. So that's one threshold, if you will. The other threshold is if the nature of the event is going to cause either town right-of-way or town parking lots primarily to be used in a manner that they're not open to the general public. So if someone wants to do we had a person last year who said, hey, I want to do a Mardi Gras parade. And we're like, okay, and I want to close Commercial Row for it. We're like, well, you can do that. You can put in an application for that, but there's a lot that comes with that. You're closing a road, you're setting up detour traffic. There's a lot of expense with that. Or you could structure your event so that if it's on the sidewalks, it's not closing the road, it's not closing a parking lot. You don't need a permit. You can walk down a sidewalk with a sign or beads or whatever, and you can get 100 of your friends to join you in that. So those are the thresholds. It's if you're closing a street, closing a sidewalk, closing a parking lot, or creating a situation where additional town resources are needed and the cost of those resources need to be recouped. And generally, we probably get half a dozen folks a year that come in with an idea for a new thing that they want to do. And what we'll generally do is say, well, you go the special event permit route, here's what it looks like, or you could twist a couple of dials and you don't need a permit from us. And that's the direction we try to encourage people to go, just to kind of minimize that administrative effort on our side, minimize cost to folks that are looking to do creative things, give them a chance to see if their idea is kind of actually gains a foothold. The most recent conversation like that was a group that wants to try to bring back a Truckee Winter Carnival. So we suggested some ways they could do that where they wouldn't need a special event permit, and we'll see if they choose to try to cause that series of events to happen or not. So with that, the only other comment I'd say is I think what staff sees this update in the event policy being is some fine tuning. I think largely from our perspective, our current policy is probably accomplishing 90-ish% of everything we think it should be, and we're looking to just kind of fine tune that last 10% is how we're seeing. That's what we would see the staff recommendation doing. So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you, Dan and Alfred. Just a reminder to council, we're just providing some direction here. No action will need to be taken. So we'll see about consensus on some direction. Councilmember Henderson, any questions?
Thank you. I have just one. The staff report notes that sort of given this increased emphasis on public safety, you're recommending an adjustment to the service charge for police staffing. And I just wanted to check, does that proposed service charge rate apply to the town staff who work on the after action report, which was a pretty comprehensive and time-consuming activity that goes along with these types of events?
It does not.
So just to elaborate a little bit more on that, that's something more recent that we're doing with our emergency management position. We don't typically go back and charge, or we wouldn't plan on charging the applicant. That's more for information, lessons learned on our end. If that was the direction of council, you could give us that direction to bring that back. It's probably a fairly significant cost. There's a lot of time that goes into developing that. And Bob is actually here, so he might be able to speak to that more.
I know you worked a lot on that after action report. I don't have any other questions, but maybe in deliberation if anyone else.
Well, maybe just as a quick follow-up to that, would it be fair to say that the after-action report is going to inform a future permit award, basically, right? So while we're not recouping costs on an after-action report, a lot of the recommendations that came out of that are going to inform what that permit ends up looking like in the subsequent year. Potentially.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And you might also want to consider the scale of the event in terms of investing that time and doing an after-action report.
Right. Yeah. Like we're not looking for that on everyone necessarily. Vice Mayor Zabriskie, any questions? No questions. Councilmember Klövstad.
A couple. So kind of still in that same line, last year we waived approximately $50,000 in fees. But not each of those 22 permits. Many of those fees waived were very small. I understand that, but we could waive up to $5,000 without coming to council for any event, correct? And so that could really add up. Where did that $50,000 from this year come from?
The bulk of that was the mitigation that was done for 4th of July. So about 50% of that was for that.
No, I realize that. Just what budget line item does it come from?
Oh, out of the other?
Yeah.
It doesn't get get charged to a specific line item. It's more that there's some costs that are in our existing budget that don't get recouped. So as an example, Truckee Thursdays. So, they requested a fee waiver of up to $5,000. That was granted. So there was, $5,000 worth of, in reality, police time that wasn't billed for that otherwise would have been. So it's expenses that are already showing up in our operating budget that are not being recouped.
So in the case of the $50,000, the majority of that would have been police staffing or emergency operations team time. Kind of to Dan's point earlier about this is, from our perspective, maybe dealing with about good in 90% of the cases, and we're just trying to tweak it a little bit. It's a good reminder that the special events permit policy was originally adopted right before COVID happened, and then COVID happened, so we didn't have a lot of special events. So we're still in that kind of range of seeing what works and, tweaking it here and there. And that is consistent with how we track some of our expenses for special events. We've never done after action reports before. And I think we've committed to doing that for the entire 4th of July Day celebrations to include the parade for next year. And continuing to evolve and learn as we work through these processes. So we probably don't track everything great in terms of staff time, but we are trying to do that better going forward.
Okay, great. That's helpful. And now we're talking about raising that to 6,120, and that's that we could waive per event. And then we added 3 events. I guess one of the thoughts was, what is the trajectory of those added events? That's a concern. I know you don't really have that information, but something to maybe think about in crafting this policy. What I know, Dan, you talked a little bit about what triggers a special event permit. So the number of attendees doesn't factor into that. It's really whether or not it impacts a right-of-way or a road or a parking lot.
Yeah, and so I'll use an example, concerts at Regional Park. Mm-hmm. So the Wednesday concerts, they've been a tradition for a long period of time. There's some of the concerts that are more popular than others that result in more spillover parking on Donner Pass Road. But, parking on roadway shoulders is a, conventional use of how we use our roads. It's not closing the travel lanes. So that kind of an event, we don't require a special event permit for it. A concert that is maybe more of a nighttime concert that might have a different clientele that might require slightly more security services for in the form of the police department, that you could actually have less spillover parking on Donner Pass Road, but if in the judgment of the police chief, that's an event that requires additional police officers to be available in case in case they're needed, then that event would require a special event permit, because then we need to recoup the cost of that additional staff time that's put forward for the event.
Nuanced. Last question. So neighborhood block parties. I mean, they're technically closing down the road, but it's all kind of a communal effort.
So if someone comes to the town and says, hey, I want to do a neighborhood block party and close the road, we're like, well, you need a special event permit. If you don't close the road, you don't need a special event permit. And then we leave it at that. If they come back and say, yeah, I want to close the road, I want to set up barricades, I want to do this and that, then we'll say, here's the process for that. But if you do your event and you don't close the road and you just kind of do it amongst your neighbors, then, and don't tell people they can't drive down the street. If they show up and need to drive down the street, then you don't need a permit. So,
thank you.
Councilmember Romack.
There's a limit to the peak season amount that we allow currently, right?
Yes.
And the staff's not proposing that we need to look at that
No.
at all. Because because I did just have a question of the peak season. Winter is the third Friday in December through first Sunday in January, which is just a very short period of time. Would staff have any thoughts on if we should include MLK weekend or President's Week in peak season, or we don't typically have people asking about events during that time?
We haven't yet. And usually that time of year is problematic for doing special events. I suppose if someone wanted to close a parking lot downtown and do a crawdad feed or, who knows what, something like that, that may be something that could be feasible during a weekend like that. But we would also have to look at, is that a weekend that's going to be unduly impactful to the businesses? To close a parking lot, we might deny a permit in that example if we think it's like, hey, I want to set up on Commercial Row on one of the busiest retail weekends of the summer and take over the parking lot next to the fire station. But TDMA is not supportive of it. We're probably not going to issue a special event permit for that. But if it's a off-peak time period where there's vacant parking available, and that might be a fun event for the community and might provide some additional spillover business benefit to the downtown businesses, then we would issue a permit in that circumstance.
I would just add on to that something to keep in mind as you're having this conversation is Visit Truckee Tahoe is working on their sustainable tourism destination management plan. And out of that conversation, there may be a different definition of peak season or when they'd prefer to see events and support events. And you would want to probably align with that at a future discussion of this.
Thank you. No further questions.
Great, thank you. We've already done that, and we do have a different definition of it at VTT specifically, just FYI. My only question... Can
you share what that is?
Yeah, maybe when we get to deliberation,
okay, thank you.
Because I was already going to bring it up in deliberation, but my real question is, how does the single waste foodware ordinance apply to a special event or to anything happening within town limits without writing it into the actual special event policy? Like, are food trucks automatically, if they're within the town limits, or they automatically have to comply with that?
The single-use foodware ordinance does not apply to food trucks or special events. The styrofoam ban does. The thinking behind that is that the requirements of the single-use foodware ordinance are reusable foodware for in-house dining, which doesn't apply to food trucks, and then the 25-cent fee for takeout containers, which is a little bit hard to enforce for something like a special event because there's not really any alternative, like a green box program for something that's just a pop-up event.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Cool. Open it up for public comment. Any member of the public? You got 3 minutes. State your name. You're all here for Tahoe Donner 8.2. Sven, nothing? Okay. Great. Closing public comments. We'll bring it back for deliberation. I'll just quickly start out with the different peak seasons. So generally just Labor Day is no longer, like, basically kids go back to school the second week of August and it's pretty much done after that. And so I believe VTT's, Hillary, you might have that more handy than I do at the moment. Do you? Do you have our?
They did change their policy to have the peak season summer events start the fourth Friday of June, whereas the town, I believe, is the third Friday of June. So it's a little bit different there. I don't recall the end of it.
I think we ended it the second weekend of August. So sometime in or before about August 15th-ish, wherever that seems to lie. And really Labor Day has sort of come off of that schedule. But the town also, just for everybody's information, treats Labor Day and Memorial Day a little bit differently, where you can have sort of other special non-code compliance types of things happening on those two holidays as well. So that's a little bit of a gray area, I would say. But with that, I'll pass it off to Councilmember Henderson on any additional direction you'd like to provide.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just go right into it. I agree with the cap on the 3 events annually at Donner Lake. And you're okay if I just kind of take them one after the next? Okay.
Go for it.
Perfect. I agree with the proposed adjustment to the service charge for police staffing. I'm actually fine with retaining the fee waiver threshold at 5,000 and not moving it to the 6,120. It's a nice clean number. I think it's easier for everyone to sort of track. I agree with the special events policy to be reviewed at least within 3 years of adoption to make sure that we're sort of keeping up with as things change. And then the only one that I would be interested in exploring, if any other council members want to, is sort of how and whether that staff time for after action reports is considered part of an event contribution. I recognize that it's to inform sort of future events and our learnings, but it's also to inform the impacts to the community at large. And it is a really big investment that, substantial time was spent on this year. So I would explore that one if there is an interest in doing so.
Did you have a threshold you were wanting to propose? Because I don't think you're talking about an after action report for all 20 something events.
No, I think for like our large events, however we want to define that, if you will.
Yeah, I think we would have to define it.
Yeah,
if we
I
were
agree
going to
with
do
you.
that, because I think certain large events, you could consider Barracuda large, but I would probably say not a lot of people are impacted by Barracuda. Just at a very high level rate versus 4th of July, which we're already doing, right? And so I would just say we would want to very clearly define it, because it's going to be a pretty significant cost to putting on an event.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think I'm sort of interested in the part of, is it part of the town's contribution toward events as well? But again, only if my fellow council members want to explore that with me.
And the first thing you said was you were in
Agree with the cap on the 3
support of
events
the cap.
annually at Donner Lake.
Donner Lake, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. And Vice Mayor Zabriskie? Feel free to chime in on those, and then anything else you want to add.
I'm fine with the recommendations as staff presents them. They're providing a rationale for each of them. If I had I agree $5,000 is a nice clean number, but if I had to choose between an inflation adjustment and a clean number, I would go with the inflation adjustment. So subject to what the rest of you have to say, I'm fine with staff's.
Did you guys both want to chime in, Councilmember Henderson first, on adjusting the calendar? Either to align with VTT's calendar, or leave as is, or come up with our own random calendar based on some other criteria?
I mean, I generally think that when we're working with different organizations and agencies, the more alignment we have, the better. We've done that, in a variety of different places, whether it's around AMIs and housing programs or things like that. So I think the more that aligned we are around that calendar, the better.
Any comments on that?
I would want to get input from staff first, because at face value, alignment's a good idea, but we haven't gotten any input from staff.
Yeah, and we're more asking them to come back to us with some data, right? So in the subsequent meeting, basically, if they come back to us and say, hey, here's why we agree with VTT's calendar or not, that's satisfies you.
I'm fine. I think that's a good idea.
Cool.
To ask them to come back with their thoughts on aligning the events calendar.
Thank you. Councilmember Klefstad.
So just on that one, just now, I would want to understand the reasoning from VTT for those dates. That seems like a very narrow window to me, but I'm sure there was some serious logic and discussion that went into that. So if that could be part of the staff report or maybe a separate presentation, that would be very helpful. I think the after action report, because it does take so much time and it is informative, I'm not saying that we charge that to the event producer, but I think it should be tracked as a contribution, as part of our contribution to the event, because it does inform how we permit that event in the future. So I think that would be very beneficial to understand. And I do think there are some other events that we would benefit from doing after action reports. Just how many people attended? How far did they travel from? What was the waste impact? What was the economic contribution? If we could identify any of that, I think it would be very informative. Other than that, I think I'm very supportive of what the staff has outlined. Yes, please add the sustainability and public safety measures that are outlined in the staff report. I think it is really important that we continue to maintain caps on events during our peak season, and would prefer to see those decreasing over time rather than increasing over time, obviously. And the every 3-year policy review, I think, is really important. We saw huge changes, obviously, in 2020 after COVID. We've got a lot of moving parts and pieces in town with new developments that can significantly change the dynamics of it. I think that's really important to have that on a regular every 3-year schedule. And also that means every council rotation is contributing.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Romack.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Councilmember Klovstad? Just the after action report you said should be tracked as a contribution. That you're not envisioning that counted towards the 5,000 or 6,000 fee waiver. It's more just us tracking staff time. I'm just confirming that's kind of what I heard.
Well, at this point, the only one that it would apply to is the 4th of July, and we contribute well beyond that cap. So it would just be increasing our contribution. Just so, again, we're tracking it. Like, all right, this past year, we charged them $25,000 and we spent $25,000. So we would be able to say, okay, we actually spent $28,000 because there was this additional cost. That's what I would be going for. And the other item, with the $5,000 limit, I know it's important to keep increasing things for inflation, but I just feel like the 5,000 is already a pretty big number, and I kind of would like to see things that come back that we're waiving for anything over that amount. So I would be inclined to leaving it at the $5,000 level, but also subject to what my other council members decide.
Thank you. And go for it,
Please,
Mayor.
Please.
I support staff's recommendations, sustainability measures. I do support the increasing the fee waiver to the 6120. It does seems like staff's got a good understanding of events, and if this makes sense and limits us from having to hear a bunch of coming back to us very often for events that are just standard practice, then I would support it. I think tracking the after action report time spent makes sense, but I just want to be clear, not towards the fee waiver or whatnot. So what you were saying, I agree with. If we say we're agreeing to contribute $25,000, we'll track our staff time. We actually contributed $28,000, and I think that would be valuable data in 3 years when I agree we should go back and look. And then if we see, wow, we're spending way more staff time on these than we thought, do we need to have a different mechanism for charging for them? Definitely would be interested in exploring matching up with VTT's calendar. That would seem to make sense. But I kind of agree with you. It seems the 4th Friday of June to the 2nd week of August. I was thinking more, do we need to make these peak season times longer? It seems like people are coming earlier in June. So I would want to understand how VTT settled on those. But if there is cohesion, so that way everyone's in alignment, that would make sense. Did I get them all?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. I think we have a bunch of consistency here. I'd like to just mention a couple of quick things. So one, the VTT data is basically based on occupancy data. It's actually data-based. It wasn't just randomly picked necessarily. It's based on average daily rates and sort of when the occupancy is being seen. So The reason for that is we are shifting back in the tourism world to both not only an economic downturn, but also to significantly more traditional travel patterns. I think we're seeing that up here, especially in the last year, and we're really looking at that continuing for any of the business owners, myself included. This was one of the longest and slowest off seasons we've seen in 5 years since pre-COVID times, and that's exactly what we used to have. And you used to have to save all your money to get through the last 2 to 3 months, and we're very much sort of back in that traditional pattern. And VTT's new calendar was developed just this past summer in response to the kind of what we are seeing as a readjustment of those patterns. So, but I would agree with you, June is the new August at the end of the day. And so, does it make sense to move things a little bit further up in June and free up a little more August potentially? And the other reality with that is special event producers are not really interested in August anymore. That's why we're seeing the gravel race. That's why we're seeing significant bookings outside of August, is because it's become significantly more unpredictable due to smoke impacts. So there's a lot of other sort of pushes and pulls. And I think if we're just being open to economic opportunity on some of these special events, aligning with that provides a greater amount of flexibility within the special event policy. So that would be my preference moving forward, but we'll let staff come back with that one. One of the concerns I very much have with both the sustainability initiatives and the transit alternative initiatives is almost everything that was listed there is not actually controlled by us. So like a bike valet, we don't pay for or contribute or run a bike valet. That is run by a local nonprofit who takes sponsorships and takes their own general fund to run a bike valet. So I just have concerns with requirements of those types of things. And I think we need to be extremely aware of recommending is great. Providing offsets is great. If they choose to run a bike valet, maybe that gets them an extra $1,000 in fee waiver, because it's going to cost them money to get said bike valet. And the same thing goes for sustainability measures, all of stuff like that. So while I'm in favor of the inflation fee adjustment as well, because that's just what we do, in our world these days, we just raise the prices of things. We should also be aware that a lot of these services that we may or may not require or provide as optional have real costs that are associated with them, and we should be aware of that rather than just assigning requirements without having the funding to back that up. So to me, I would just like to see a balance in there. And other than that, I think that is it. So everybody good? Anybody want to add in anything else? Staff, are you good? You have enough direction? Any confusion or clarifying questions?
No confusion whatsoever.
One thing.
Your mic's not on, Jen.
Oh, well, there we go. We have 3 that are interested in the inflation adjustment. I
believe we heard 3 at the minimum.
Okay.
And potentially that inflation adjustment or some type of cost recruitment is also commensurate to whatever additional heightened incentive or whatever that special event chooses to put into place. I'm not sure. I didn't give the rest of my council and that
can we
opportunity.
test the rest of the council on that concept?
I don't even know if it's necessary because it might not even be realistic. I think when they come back to us with, the reality of what that even looks like. Because I'm not saying we're going to require a bike valet, but if we're going to require a bike valet, we have to understand we don't control that.
So that is under the alternative transportation plan. So we're giving examples of what those could be because not every situation would maybe need a bike valet. I think we learned from the 4th of July festivities that wasn't really heavily used for the fireworks, but transit was, and so that would be a requirement. I think we plan to list out options and kind of finesse it to the special event.
I think what I just want to communicate is that I'm not personally interested in having staff develop a plan for providing additional fee waivers or offsets for the requirements to mitigate these events. But that's why I would like to hear if other council members are interested in that. I think these are special events, and they are something that these producers choose to do. They're not required to do, and if they so choose, these are our requirements. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I'm totally on board with you. I'm just saying if there are requirements that we don't control, we have to understand what the impacts of those are. There might not be a bike valet. So we could require an alternative transportation model, right? But that might literally just be TART Connect at the end of the day, or enhanced TART Connect at the end of the day, or something like that. But if we can't require, I'm just sort of pointing out that we don't control things like a bike valet at the end. At the bottom line, right? We can say, hey, this opportunity maybe exists, but
Yeah. So again, the events are very kind of specific. So using the bike valet as an example, like Truckee Thursdays, an event that generates lots of cars in the downtown area. If we can reduce the number of vehicles downtown during that event, that's a good thing. So that may be one where we'd say you got to provide a bike valet service. You could talk to the Trails Foundation about providing that service, or you could figure out a way to hire a couple of folks to staff the event to provide the service, or there may be one or two other ways to go about it. So we wouldn't necessarily dictate who the service provider is, but in an example like that, we might say, no, this is really important, and push really hard on it. On an event it's not generating significant overflow parking impacts and whatnot, it may be less important and might be a suggestion as opposed to a requirement. Yep. We're trying to hit a reasonable balance point between reducing event impacts on the surrounding businesses and surrounding community while not being overly burdensome to the event promoter, in ways that are not productive. So that's what we're trying to do, and use judgment in the process.
Yeah, and maybe I misspoke, but I think we're all on the same page with Councilmember Klostad. We're not looking to increase fee waivers in exchange for anything. We're simply looking to either adjust for inflation or not, and be aware of some external factors that go into that. Is that fair?
That I'm comfortable with. I thought you were asking for us to increase our fee waivers based on those requests. So
not
that's
necessarily.
what I was not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Great, cool. Everybody good? Please do.
One thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Overall, I'm looking at these special events as, for the most part, being community building events, largely intended for either permanent residents or other homeowners in our community. And so the town is participating in a way in these community events, actually in a way supporting them. That's the lens from which I'm operating. So it would be different if I were looking at a private event. If Berlin were coming to town and they were going to make a lot of money, I wouldn't think of that so much as a community event as a private event to make a profit. And so I'm just saying that's kind of suffusing my view that this is something in which the town participates.
Yeah, and so that's where I think the fee waiver comes into play. So, and there's criteria in our event policy on the types of events that would qualify for a fee waiver. So a for-profit concert event that requires a special event permit would probably not meet the conditions prerequisite to getting a fee waiver, whereas the Little League Parade in downtown Truckee probably would, right? So,
yeah, I think, is that what you were trying to get across? Great. Cool. All right, we're going to close 8.1. We're going to move on to item 8.2, Pioneer Trail Bridge Street Extension Project Update. Scott is joining us.
Yeah, and while Scott's getting set up, what staff and what Scott has done is put together a very detailed presentation on a lot of the kind of technical information surrounding the Pioneer Trail project, regarding financial information, environmental information, traffic information, and emergency evacuation information. I think Scott in his presentation is going to provide more of a summary level, not go into a whole lot of detail in any one of those categories. get to the end. Ultimately, what we're recommending is we stop work on the project. But if you as the council want to come back and dig deeper in any of those major subject areas, we've got what we believe the necessary information queued up in the proposal to do that.
Great. Thanks, Dan, and welcome, Scott. And I think I would just go off of Dan's comment that there is 2 recommended actions in front of us. And so when we do get into questions and deliberation, basically, if we're asking questions, let's have those questions focus on, if you're looking to not suspend staff work or go in a different direction other than the recommendation in front of us. I know there are a lot of great questions asked about the EIR and other more technical items. And if they help you get to where we are with a recommended action, great. And if they're just specific questions about the EIR, that could probably be handled offline at a later date. So with that, Scott, go for it.
Thanks, Dan and Mayor, for the preface there. I'm Scott Mathot. I'm one of the senior engineers here at the town, and I'm also the project manager for the Pioneer Trail and Bridge Street Extension project. So just a brief overview of the project. This is a project that extends Pioneer Trail from the Pioneer Commerce Center towards the west to meet up with Northwoods Boulevard. It also proposes to extend Bridge Street up from downtown Truckee up to meet up with that new roadway that would be extending Pioneer Trail. Some of the key goals would be to maintain the functionality of the existing Trout Creek Trail by utilizing grade-separated crossings of the new roadway so that it would function as it typically does today. And then creating a new Class 1 trail connection to the Pioneer Commerce Center and the Trails End existing trail network. So in the past 2 years, myself and some of our consultants have worked on updating the 2002 third Tahoe Donner connector project, which Dan was the project manager for at that time. So we worked on updating the roadway alignments and alternatives with the cost estimates based on today's dollars. We performed some baseline environmental studies. We did a traffic analysis, including greenhouse gas emissions, level of service, VMT, and emergency evacuation, as well as we put together a fiscal analysis to determine some funding strategies for the project. So what we're looking at here, very nice, colorful diagram that helps kind of point out what the project would entail. So over on the left-hand side of the screen, we're looking at Northwoods Boulevard, and kind of further off of the page would be the Tahoe Donner subdivision. On the right side of the screen, we're looking at the Pioneer Commerce Center, Pioneer Trail, and kind of upper right-hand corner would be Alder Creek Middle School. And then the bottom right part of the screen would be downtown Truckee. So over on the left-hand side, we're looking at the potential roadway and trail alignment. So the trail currently exists along that northern boundary of the peach-colored roadway section, and then continues down through the yellow section, and then it continues down to downtown Truckee. And so we're looking at kind of 2 different potential alignments in that area. One would be to follow the existing utility line, that's kind of a 200-foot wide swath of clear-cut forest where NV Energy and PUD have their facilities. And then we get constrained where the yellow section is pretty much the existing Class 1 trail grade there, where the proposed new trail would be grade separated down below the roadway. And then it continues on to a T intersection there where Bridge Street would extend up to that intersection and continues on carrying that new Class 1 trail connection over to the Pioneer Commerce Center to the east. And that would match up with the Comstock Drive and Pioneer Trail intersection there where the TNT concrete plant is currently located. The purple section, there's the north-south connector down to existing Bridge Street and providing that kind of switchback connection up to the Trails End trail network that currently exists in that area today, with another undercrossing there of the new roadway. So as I mentioned, we did some baseline environmental studies, which are all included in the staff report and attachments, including special status plant and animal species, the identification of Trout Creek and the surrounding wetlands in the project area, as well as cultural resources. We also developed a traffic analysis with LSC Consulting, and they determined kind of level of service implications of the new roadway. Big picture is that kind of pulls traffic off of Donner Pass Road, provides a new option for traffic generated in the Tahoe Donner community to access the eastern portions of the town, Pioneer Commerce Center, 267, as well as headed out towards 80, headed east. It would add some traffic to downtown Truckee, primarily the Bridge Street, High Street intersection there, as well as a bit to the Pioneer Trail Comstock intersections. Overall, existing conditions slightly improved along Donner Pass Road, a little bit more traffic added to those intersections I mentioned in downtown, as well as kind of full build out, same thing, improvements on Donner Pass Road, and a little bit additional traffic in downtown. So one thing, the Donner Pass Road roadway capacity, it slightly improves that by about 13%, provides some additional capacity east and west of 89 South towards that level of service E threshold that was determined for Donner Pass Road capacity in the community. Overall, about 1% reduction at build out for both VMT and greenhouse gas emissions. So slight improvement there for both of those metrics. For emergency evacuation, the new roadways could provide up to about a 32% reduction in evacuation time with some improvements to Northwoods Boulevard and assuming some free-flowing operations there with no real breakdowns or backups during an evacuation event. The other portion would be, the other main kind of topic was the financial feasibility analysis for the project. It's an expensive project. So estimated to be about $43 million total. That includes design, permitting, construction, and construction management. There's currently $5 million in the adopted budget, $2.5 million from traffic impact fees, and $2.5 million from TSSA 1 funds. So as part of the financing strategy, the town worked with EPS to determine, to evaluate kind of all existing and potential new funding sources that could be utilized for the project. That includes bond capacity and revenue dollars. So from a state and federal funding option perspective, there's not a ton that are easily obtainable today and held on to for a long period of time. Usually you have to have project readiness and some other characteristics to get those state and federal funding options.
Hey Scott, I just want to jump in on that because there's a lot of projects here at the town that we will initiate and take well into the design process before we've figured out all the construction funding sources. But those are generally projects where we know there's either a high enough commitment from the council that you might put some general fund dollars into it if needed when the time comes, or that projects like creek restorations where we've got a higher likelihood of attracting outside grant funds. With this so a moment ago I mentioned what we're recommending is that we suspend the project. And this is a key piece of it. We're not expecting large sums of dollars from outside of Truckee are going to be available to build this project, right? If there was a $500 million source of money out there to build, additional access points into additional subdivisions and these kind of circumstances, that might affect our recommendation, right? It would be like, if that was a situation, we'd be like, hey, let's keep working on this thing, get it more project ready so it's more ready to shop for grant funds. Because this project's so big, getting to being ready for construction, that's a $2 to $3 million investment probably, maybe more, with not at this point what a high degree of likelihood that we're going to attract outside funding with it. So that's kind of a key thing. It's a bit of a gut check, right? In terms of what are we seeing out there now in terms of possibility for outside funding and what do we think is going to be the case in the future. But like if we were feeling bullish that, hey, let's just keep designing this thing and spend the money on it and then hopefully we get the construction funding from somewhere else later, we'd be recommending that we keep moving on it. But we're not seeing that as a high likelihood, which is part of the reason we're saying, hey, if we're not prioritizing this locally as like a top project, that we're going to devote a lot of our resources to, let's not spend a few more $1 million to develop a pile of paper on a project that may never get constructed. So sorry for interrupting, Scott.
Yeah, appreciate that. That was good. So kind of piggybacking off of what Dan said, we kind of focused on local funding options. The main ones that we looked at were parcel tax townwide and Tahoe Donner specific, utilizing traffic impact fee dollars as well as the TSSA $1 there. So as Dan mentioned, the kind of financial study summary is that we focused on local dollars that we could utilize and implement today. It would have to be a top priority by the town based on these funding options, which would be to kind of utilizing existing TIF and TSSA 1 revenues, adding additional TIF revenue to that, utilizing Measure U for the new trail connection, and then utilizing the annual revenues from TSSA 1, the entire amount to secure bond financing, as well as the TIF revenue is about half of our average TIF revenue over the past 7 or 8 years. So total base funding for all three of the packages is $26 million. Remaining needed is about 17, which three funding strategies were kind of prepared to finance that 17 million. One is a specific Tahoe Donner property tax. A second one would be a town-wide property tax, obviously lower volume because of the additional properties there. And the third one would be even more traffic impact fee revenue kind of set aside every year for bond financing, up to about 3/4 of all of the TIF revenue in any given year, as well as a Tahoe Donner property tax there as well. So an alternative to this, obviously we talked about the east-west connection and the north-south connection of Bridge Street. A scaled-down option would be to eliminate the Bridge Street extension, which would decrease the project amount by about $12 million. Utilizing the same potential base funding strategy, we'd need about $5 additional million to be provided by another funding source, which if it's a top priority by council and the community, we could probably reach that with the additional quarter of the traffic impact fee revenue in any given year. So hitting, again, that kind of more risky 3/4 of the traffic impact fee revenue every year for the next 30 years. So main considerations moving forward, obviously working with Tahoe Donner Association to support TSSA 1 revenue utilization for the project because it would eliminate funding availability for other TSSA 1 eligible projects. Committing 50% of TIF revenue over the next 30 years, or even up to 75% of TIF revenue over the next 30 years, which would obviously significantly reduce the funding available for other TIF eligible projects. And then any parcel tax would require a 2/3 majority vote by the residents who would be taxed on it.
Hey, Scott, just a quick clarification on that. So, that first bullet where it says staff recommends acquiring TDA support. So we're not suggesting that we go out and give a hard sell to the Tahoe Donner Association. I think what we're suggesting is that we would need to see a hard sell from the Tahoe Donner Association to the town that this is their number one top priority for use of the TSSA 1 funds, as a kind of as a signal that this project has some viability in terms of accumulating the local funding sources that would be needed to build it.
So some feedback that we've received from the stakeholders in the area, obviously the Tahoe Donner Association board, they're concerned about the cost of the new roadway. They're currently not supportive of additional TSSA 1 funds being utilized on this project at this time. And alternatively, they're interested in other emergency evacuation route options that are less expensive prior to continuation of work on this specific project. Other adjacent property owners are generally amenable to the idea of the project with varying concerns or questions about the project. It could provide development access benefits to each of the surrounding parcels in case they wanted to develop. Most of it's undeveloped, golf course, open space, that kind of stuff right now. And right-of-way would need to be negotiated as part of future phases of design. So kind of next steps for the project. If work is continued on the project, staff recommends the first step be to conduct community polling to determine interest in funding of the project community-wide. Currently, there's other initiatives that are testing community support of funding community projects such as transportation, Truckee Library, et cetera. And so now is probably not the right time to gauge the interest in the community of another substantial funding project. So staff recommends no further work at this time, and to reconsider it as part of the fiscal year 25, 26, 26, 27 work plan in about a year from now. So recommended actions, which match the staff report recommended actions, would be 1, to accept the studies completed to date as presented in the staff report and attachments, and then 2, to direct staff to suspend work on the Pioneer Trail and Bridge Street Extension project until community and staff capacity exist to conduct the community opinion polling related to the local tax measure and funding the project. As Dan mentioned, and that was included in the staff report and the attachments, a slew of detailed information. Happy to answer questions council might have on it. Also have Amy with EPS here to answer any very detailed financing questions, and then Gordon with LSC for any traffic related stuff that staff can't answer.
Yep.
Also have some Tahoe Honor Association board members and the interim general manager, Annie, over there as well. So.
Thank you, Scott. Very comprehensive already. Even that was the summary presentation. So I am scared to know what the 30-slide detailed presentation looked like. So thanks for getting us through that. Let's start with any council questions. Councilmember Romack, you get to go first instead of last now. So
Pressure's
take
on.
it away.
I do not have any additional questions. I really appreciate all the details in the staff report.
Councilmember Klofstad.
Yeah, I do have one. What would be the trigger that would reinitiate work on this project? You just said roughly a year, but what would actually trigger an initiation of work?
Well, ultimately, that would be a council decision. It could be changing priorities. If something were to occur where, because we've seen kind of ebbs and flows in the interest in this project in the past. If something were to occur where there was a large degree of community support that were to build around this project that we're not seeing at the moment, that could be a reason. If we were to see some large pot of money come available at the state or the federal level that potentially we could be competitive for if we advance the project design further, that could be a reason to reprioritize this. If there's, I think, changing, another one could be development activity in this area. So some of the project that was evaluated back in 2002 has been built. So a lot of the Pioneer Commerce Center development and the alignment of Comstock Drive, that was part of the unbuilt portion of this project back in 2002 because we kind of got the alignments established then. As development happened, we made sure that the development was consistent with this road project. There is more private property with development potential located to the in this corridor. So it could be that private development interests advance some of the construction of this project and pick up some of this funding puzzle that funding gap that exists. That then maybe takes the cost to the community down a certain amount to make this project more viable in terms of kind of a community priority. So those would be the types of things that I could see that might kind of bring that back onto the radar in the future, or bring that back as a higher priority in the future.
Those are a lot of variables. So the development being, for example, the Indian Jack parcel that we received a public comment on. Okay, so those are lots of variables, but what you're saying is if one of those were to come up and you thought that could impact the recommendation here, then you would bring that back to council to reinitiate? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, ultimately the council would need to budget, because I think the next step would probably be if it's a large funding source that comes available, such that we don't think we need to develop a new source of funding within the community to build the project. In that instance, the next step might be to do more engineering to be competitive for whatever that new funding source is. If it's more community interest in seeing the project built than what we're seeing at the moment, then the next step might be to go out and see, is the community willing to pay some money, on top of their existing taxes to see this built. So I think what that next step looks like could be dependent on what the variable is that potentially puts this back in the work plan in the future. But any of those things would need to go through the council in the form of
a contract, an agreement award.
Yeah, budgeting funds for the project, and then whatever consultant
the
services
CIP
are needed.
prioritization process during
Right.
the budget is generally the next time you'll get a chomp at this, because what they're saying is we're going to put it down to the bottom of the CIP projects for now. We've spent the money we were going to spend, and if we want to bring it back, it'll have to chug its way back up in the CIP.
Yeah, and specifically, we've got a CIP right now that's got $2.5 million in TSSA 1 and $2.5 million in traffic impact fee in it to advance the design. If we officially put this on pause, what you could expect as part of your next budget process is those numbers would be zeroed out, and those dollars would be recommended to some other project priority.
You saw where I was going with that. So thank you, because that's ultimately what I was trying to get at, is we do have this money set aside, but if it stays there, then you guys could utilize that to do design and engineering should one of these other factors, unless we reprioritize those funds. And so the staff report says you saved $80,000 during this initial phase, but what was the total cost of all of these consultants that we did invest to get this volume of data to this decision point? Because that's ultimately what we were doing.
It was a few $100,000. I can pull up the exact number here, but the $80,000 in savings is primarily based on the original contract included the polling and public outreach efforts that we haven't moved forward on. So that's where most of that savings comes from. The total to date, about $200,000.
Okay, thank you so much, Scott.
Good. Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Yeah, broadly, my questions could be summed up as a general question of why we didn't do a non-construction alternative. And that relates to a number of our town policies and state and federal rules directed at moving away from building more roads and moving into non-polluting transportation, whether it's public transportation or non-motorized transportation. And so looking at the level of service benefits from the project and the VMT benefits from the project, what is the impact of our policies about moving to these other forms of transportation, as well as the state policies? How do they affect the calculations of what we're going to experience in the future locally?
I'll try to answer that. So the first question, so the no build alternative, the don't build the road alternative, that would be the existing condition analysis that we see in the study, as well as the cumulative conditions, the general plan build out scenario that doesn't build the road. So that's effectively the no build scenario. If the question is, the state of California is strongly encouraging electrification of the vehicle fleet, which would mean that the existing average emission per vehicle or per vehicle mile traveled today may be twice what it would be 10 or 15 years from now. We haven't modeled that in terms of, is the GHG reduction going to be this, or is it going to be less than that because of the change in the vehicle fleet? We could do that. It would be, it's just a question of, how much expense do we want to put into that analytical effort, and what would we do with that information if we acquired it? So it kind of gets into the level of sophistication and the number of variables that we introduce into these alternative comparisons that we're trying to put together.
Okay.
And maybe I didn't answer your question. I don't know.
No, you just raised another question, because I'm under the impression that the state rules, if we just focus on greenhouse gases, the requirement that no new cars all new cars need to be EV or hybrid in and 2035 or whatever is going to have a dramatic impact on future greenhouse gas emissions, which could justify whatever additional cost there is in the modeling locally. So it sounds to me as if you're dismissing out of hand consideration of an analysis of the reduction in GHG due to state policies because of the additional cost of the modeling.
I wouldn't say it dismissing out of hand, or we're trying to be strategic in terms of where we spend money on consultants.
And then let's go back to the level of service and VMTs. Just, we have all these policies and programs now pointing towards increased use of shared rides, whether through public transportation or other means, as well as non-motorized travel. Aren't we developing data or a method where we could start inputting that into our projections of what's actually going to occur in the future?
So if the question is, so our current traffic model does not have what's called mode split in there. There's some models that do. Again, that's a level of sophistication we could add into our traffic modeling in the future, if that's going to better inform our policy decisions. Our current traffic model does not include that level of detail, really as a result of the kind of the very small percentage of transit services that we offer. And I think even in the largest cities, you know, maybe you get to 20% transit as the mode split as compared to 80% auto. So you can put a lot of time and effort into developing a model that will include, gee, how many buses do you have on the roadway network, and how will that reduce traffic? Whether the quality of the information you get out of that is commensurate to the expense of developing that information. That's really the trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor
So,
Zabriskie.
so for the future, I would be looking to staff to advise me whether we shouldn't be doing that
Yeah,
in
I
light
think,
of our policy.
and I think you made a great point in the future on this. So if the decision tonight is to continue this moving forward, that would be good feedback to have in doing further analysis. If we're going to shelf this for now, then when we come back for the discussion, we may be under very different circumstances and have better data.
Yeah. For any construction project, for that matter, this may be a good exercise. And my last question has to do with the confusion I'm having on the build out. There's a big difference between what the town's going to look like in 2040 and what it's going to look like at build out. Just looking at future development capacity for housing units, 40% of that additional capacity, according to the general plan, is going to occur after 2040. I don't know, did the analysis take that difference into account or treat build out as occurring in 2040? If it treated it as occurring in 2040, is that a material difference? Is that something that needs to be corrected, or would it be insignificant?
So what the model looked at is build out of the general plan. Whether that happens in 2040, 2050, 2060, or 2070, that's what those build out projections represent.
Yeah, well, the projection was we won't be built out in 2040. I'm trying to find out does it matter if staff was assuming 2040 as the build out, does that affect the calculation of the greenhouse gas reductions that would be achieved, or the amount of vehicles that would be on the road, or?
I'm not sure that, I mean, I think the main issue and why staff's directing us to suspend work is primarily a price and cost issue. Yeah. It's not necessarily achieving a level of service or GHG.
Well, I thought those were some of the rationales for if we were going to go ahead with it.
Is cost. So I guess I'm just failing to see how some of the questioning is leading us to helping us find
the missing $25 million. And if it is, that's fine. And if the questions that you're asking are going to help you make a decision whether we should suspend it or not, or you just want to improve the study, I think those are two different things. And we should just be clear about what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to improve future studies, I think that's a great conversation to have, but not on this agenda item. If you want to change the recommended action, then we should get to some reasons of why we should be doing that and questions that are going to help you make that argument.
Okay. I was looking at the LOS and the greenhouse gas and the VMT presentations as all being rationales for doing the project, if not now at some later date. That's why I'm asking.
Okay.
I'll chime in a little bit. I think to answer your question simply, it doesn't necessarily matter what year build out occurs. Build out's based on the development potential within the town whenever it occurs. And then the greenhouse gas reductions are based on that 331 CO2 emission equivalents as of today. So sure, with changes in EV adoption and those types of things, those numbers will likely change, which would likely change the GHG reduction, but those are all based on today's metrics that we have available to us.
I think the missing piece is the cost is the overriding. It's a significant cost, and we don't have a funding plan for that at the moment. These other components are certainly part of the consideration, but really it's the cost. And at the point you pick this up in the future, should you decide not to continue it tonight, this study might be outdated. We might have more information. We're likely going to revisit the conversation and determine.
Given what staff presented in the report, for me, those other aspects of the staff report are important to me about whether we move ahead tonight or 2 years from now. And if we come back 2 years from now, I hope we address these other items. And those are all my questions.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Henderson.
I don't have any further questions to inform the decision. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Nor do I. With that, we'd like to open it up to public comment. Any member of the public, come on up. You've been sitting so patiently and attentively. So if you have something to say, this is your chance. Seeing none. We got your public comment. Nothing to add. Okay. Thank you for being here. With that, we will close public comment. We'll bring it back for councilmember deliberation and discussion. So if anybody has anything to change, this is a great time to bring it up. Otherwise, we can proceed with staff's recommendation. Councilmember Romack.
I support proceeding with staff's recommendation. I am not hearing an overwhelming community majority to seek out funding sources at this time. Look forward to continuing to work with Tahoe Donner Association on other opportunities. So yes, I support staff's recommendation.
Councilmember Klofstad.
Same. I think it's really the only logical choice at this point. Look forward to maintaining a pulse on some of those possible impacts and effects of changing this decision. But Vice Mayor Zabiskie, for your non-polluting transportation, let's talk about a gondola from Tahoe Donner to downtown. How about that? How costly is that? Right?
An electric one.
Yeah.
It costs less than going. It costs less than going up and over to Tahoe City, which is certainly being promoted now.
Yes. I think it's another great alternative.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie, other than including some of that excellent data in future transportation studies, do you have anything else to add to our deliberation on this one?
Yeah, I think my view is reflected in my questions. I'm concerned about more than the cost. I'm sitting here tonight, I'm thinking in terms of a hybrid solution. I appreciated the comment from the board for the Tahoe Donner Homeowners Association. I think it is appropriate to look for a less expensive, less environmentally damaging route, but in combination with our other goals, our transportation goals, really take a hard look at how those can help reduce the evacuation risks and also reduce traffic throughout our town and greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson, any additional thoughts and perhaps a motion when you're done?
Yeah, I agree with staff's recommendation. Due to the costs, no real feasible funding source. It would exhaust TSSA 1 funds, which the Tahoe board is not, Tahoe Donner board, excuse me, is not supportive of. I'd be in favor of suspending this honestly for, at least a couple of years in case unless one of those funding opportunity becomes available, because we have our other community funding measures over the next 12 to 24 months or so that we're exploring. And I would just say, Vice Mayor Zabriskie, I hear you and I understand where you were going, and I'll just throw out that, if we ever get to that place, obviously there's a lot of modeling and data and assumptions you can put into it. The state has that goal of 100% EVs by 2035. Most people keep cars on average 8 years, so it's unrealistic to expect everyone's going to have an EV and all vehicles on the road in 2035 are EVs. They account for about 20% of new car sales now for 2023. And VMTs, of course, unless we see EV owners having substantially different driving patterns than internal combustion powered vehicles, which we could, they're still putting those miles on the road, right? So just wanted to throw that out. But with that, I support staff's recommendations and would make a motion to accept the studies completed to date as presented in the staff report and attachments, and direct staff to suspend work on the PTBSE until community and staff capacity exists to conduct community opinion polling related to the local tax measure.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right. My mic wasn't on. Great. That was unanimous. Anybody was opposed? No. Great. That was 5-0. Thank you very much, staff, all the consultants, and members of the Tahoe Donner Association board and staff as well for being here. We appreciate your involvement and attention and providing your opinion in a timely fashion. Very much so. Thank you. What do we do now? Council member reports. I was like, where are we? There's more notes on the agendas over here again. I forgot this part. Cool. Council member reports. If anybody's ready to go, you ready?
I'll go. Mine's fast.
Go for it.
Participated in 2 different webinars, one on electrifying transportation and policy work in that area, which was very relevant to some of the points that Vice Mayor Zabriskie just brought up, and then one on basically using data to drive affordability outcomes for people in the utility space, which was interesting given a lot of the energy efficiency and sort of decarbonization and data analytics work that we're doing. And then besides those 2, just a bunch of one-on-one conversations over the past couple of weeks, sort of everything from heat pumps to microtransit and everything in between. So that's it.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Attended the River Revitalization Subcommittee meeting where the main focus was on outreach, using a mailer to reach property owners and business owners first, also reaching out to the Donner Creek Mobile Home Park, and then a meeting with the hospital representatives, which I attended with Mayor Polivy, and that was a lot of discussion, focused both on workforce housing development and the hospital's prospective parking lot. Then a Zoom meeting with Jasmine Bro, who's the program manager for the Homeless Resource Council, and working with both Placer and Nevada counties to establish a long-term shelter for the homeless and services. And then also the big issue recently has been, where are we going to provide a warming shelter for the homeless for this winter? I met with Alfred regarding public outreach on the town's transportation programs, attended another river revitalization meeting regarding introduction to the consultant, and then future strategies, and again brainstorming outreach. And then the CCC meeting that Hardy Bullock had initiated, we met to talk about the emergency warming shelter, which now looks like it will go in the Joseph Center, so they're right there close to the sheriff's substation and the court. So really, they shouldn't have reason to go anywhere else, right? It's terrible. I'm sorry, that was only a joke. Anyway, it's ironic site we're selecting, which looks like we're selecting. Attended the TNT TMA meeting at the first of this month, where found out that we will have park and ride for both North Star and Palisades. The The one for North Star, which the airport would not provide this year, decided not to provide, will be provided by Lyft and Enterprise, I believe, their parking lot, which is right near the airport. So that's great news. And then finally, I attended the Mountain Area Preservation Land Use study regarding TERPA. TERPA's Board of Governors is going to meet tomorrow night, and it looks like nearly the last step towards adopting rules that, if adopted, would greatly increase the allowed density, height, and one other thing on for North Shore, very near the shore, what they call the town center. So that will be a big event tomorrow, and I mention it because it's something for us to follow to help guide us. That's it.
And you did a great job at the CCC meeting, so thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Romack.
Yeah, I had a meeting with Eliza Tudor and Kelly Cutler with the Nevada County Arts Council and the Truckee Cultural Center, and just a little bit more from them about Truckee and the future and whatnot. And they highlighted how the artist lofts really helped us become a cultural district, because it's a rarity that you have housing designated for artists within a cultural district. So I thought that was interesting. Last week had lunch with the Nevada City mayor and town manager, and you popped by, Mayor. Great conversations. They were asking a lot about our public art master plan and our public art commission, and then just general other things that we're doing. I think it was a great opportunity, and looking forward to more future collaborative efforts. Attended the R2SC, the last meeting, design workshop. Our consultant ran the meeting. Excited to have them on board. We did a lot of the live surveys within the meeting, which I think was a great opportunity to allow everybody to provide feedback and empower more people to speak up, hopefully, which I think was great. Attended the town holiday party on Friday, a fantastic event. And then earlier today met with Supervisor Bullock and Allison Lehman and other staff with Nevada County. They're just kind of making their rounds of meeting with folks as they're going into their budget cycle. And we did touch on the joint meeting we're all going to be having in February with all of our town councils, city councils, and Nevada County Board of Supervisors. So excited for that. And that's it.
Great. Councilmember Klofstad.
So I did some elfing today, delivering some holiday goodies to the senior center and a few other senior apartments and a few other places. And Jesse wanted me to communicate to the community, wherever you are, her deep gratitude and thanks. Her little apartment was brimming with coffee and treats and goodies and all sorts of stuff that she was packing into goodie bags. And it was really heartwarming. It's just amazing to see how generous our community is and supportive with all of our disadvantaged communities. I also spent quite a bit of time working on the Civic Well Policymakers Conference and developing some sponsorship and working with Civic Well board members on developing our schedule and some concepts for topics. I worked on a bit of some of the presentations for the next CTA quarterly meeting. I'll be supporting a presentation from a local marketing firm that is really going to give a broad perspective for all sorts of different types of customer interactions and customer draw, customer perception on sustainability practices versus greenwashing versus, are you walking the talk? Really, really interesting data research that they'll be presenting on. So anybody is welcome, of course. It's the second Friday in January from 9 to 11 at the airport. And then a bit of work with the diversion divas and executing on our plan to create alternative digesting processes within our town and of course the town Christmas party.
Thank you. And you're going to get that information to like the chamber and stuff like that, so the business community will be aware, because I think most businesses are not getting CTA communications.
That's a great point. I'll make sure to send that off to both Colleen for VTT to distribute and
the chamber, Jessica.
And Jessica. Yeah,
that'd
thank
be
you.
the best. Yeah, no worries. Because I think it's really interesting and very helpful. So it'd be good to get good people in the room to listen. I think I was with all of you at most everything, the hospital meeting, talking about their plans. I attended the CCC meeting and listened to all of that, and a little bit of confusion at the county level as to what's happening there, but I think we're on board, so that seemed to be great. We had a VTT board meeting, and just to sort of highlight a little bit of also what we talked about. So we added one new board member, which was great, Ross McNamara from the Hampton Inn, and are considering adding another board seat that doesn't have to be a lodging payor, somebody from the business tourism community. So that is, in my opinion, a step in the right direction for creating a little bit more of a bench and stronger leadership on that board. But just a quick stat for you all, that short-term rental and ski lease supplies are up 19%, and that's supplies. And demand is down 6%. So what that is telling you is, again, it's sort of going back to our traditional models where people aren't living in their second homes quite as much as they were during COVID and during some of those years when a lot of our population grew. It was growing from people utilizing their homes that are generally were left empty. So the demand is the supply is increasing, but the demand is decreasing. And that and revenue is also down. And what that also tells you is our seasons are contracting a little bit because of that supply and demand being offset, which is a little bit why some of the calendar is reshaping itself to go back to some of our more traditional tourism patterns. So thought that was quite timely that that data came out of that meeting and would, at the very minimum, provide some thought. That is it for me at this time. We are going to adjourn to closed session, and we have a number of things on our closed session agenda that are somewhere here. 4 items. Wow, 4 items on closed session. So we will adjourn regular meeting and regroup in the back for closed session.